They found Dad's rifle in a cave at 11,000 feet, 3 years after they buried Master Sergeant Michael Brennan with full military honors at Arlington. The weapon had been wrapped in oilcloth, protected from the elements, waiting. Inside the scope caps was a message written in his precise handwriting on weatherproof paper. The ink hadn't faded. The words cut like they were fresh. "Katie, if you're reading this, I'm gone. Finish what I started. Trust no one above Colonel. The shepherd always protects his flock. Love you more than I ever said, Dad." I was 44 years old, and my father was still giving me orders from the grave. Staff Sergeant Sarah Brennan. Everyone called me Kate, except Dad. He'd always used my full middle name when he was serious, which was most of the time. Katie when he was trying to be gentle, which happened maybe twice a year if I was lucky. 3 years since they told me Master Sergeant Michael Brennan died in a training accident at Fort Carson. 3 years of knowing that story was a lie but having no proof. 3 years of watching my career stagnate, while younger soldiers got promoted past me. Too old, they said, should consider retirement, make room for the next generation, at 44. I sat at my desk at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, staring at personnel files that didn't matter, processing transfer requests for soldiers who still had futures. My office was a closet with a window. My job was a placeholder. My life was a slow fade into irrelevance. The Army I'd given 23 years to had decided I was done, even if nobody had the courage to say it directly. The package arrived on a Tuesday morning in April. No return address. Postmarked from Colorado Springs 3 weeks earlier. Inside was a thumb drive and a key to a storage unit I didn't know existed. The thumb drive had a single encrypted file. The password was the date of my first long-range qualification, the day Dad had smiled at me with something that looked almost like pride. 2,100 meters, center mass, first round impact. He'd never forgotten, neither had I. The file opened to reveal documents, photographs, financial records, bank transfers, communications intercepts, mission reports with entire sections redacted, then unredacted in handwritten notes. Dad's investigation compiled over years. At the center of everything was a name I recognized. General Robert Vance, 3 stars, Commander of Special Operations Forces Europe, a man with a spotless record and a reputation that made colonels nervous. Dad's notes told a different story. Intel sold to foreign buyers, mission compromises that led to American deaths, a network of corruption that stretched from forward operating bases in Afghanistan to Pentagon procurement offices. 15 years of treason hidden behind a wall of decorations and promotions. The final page was a list. Names, dates, locations, soldiers killed in action, 27 names, 27 men who died because someone sold their positions, their routes, their mission parameters to the enemy. I recognized 3 names from my own deployment in Iraq. Good men, brothers. I'd thought they died in combat. They died because they were sold out. Dad's last entry was dated 3 days before his death. Met with Colonel Hayes again. He says stand down, too dangerous, insufficient evidence. But I know Hayes served with Vance in Desert Storm. Not sure I can trust him. Need more proof. Vance is meeting with his buyer in Afghanistan next month. If I can get evidence of that transaction, it's over. Going to Colorado for advanced training evolution. Good cover. Will contact Katie when I get back. Time to bring her in. She's the only one who can make the shots I can't anymore. He never contacted me. 3 days later, Master Sergeant Michael Brennan was dead. Training accident, they said. Fell during a mountain navigation exercise. Body recovered after 2 days. Closed casket funeral because of the condition of the remains. I'd known it was murder, I just couldn't prove it. Now I had his rifle, his evidence, his final mission, and a choice to make. The storage unit was in Fayetteville, 15 minutes from base. Inside was more evidence: surveillance photos, audio recordings, transcripts of conversations that should never have happened. Dad had been thorough, obsessive. He documented everything except the one thing he needed most: direct proof of Vance's meeting with his foreign buyer. Without that, the rest was circumstantial, suggestive but not conclusive. Any decent defense attorney would shred it. I understood why Dad had kept investigating, why he'd gone to Colorado for one more chance to gather evidence, why he died trying. The question was whether I would finish what he started. I was 44 years old, passed over for promotion twice, assigned to a dead-end administrative position, considered too old for operational deployment. My career was effectively over. Walking away would be easy. Smart, even. Take the evidence to the Inspector General, let someone else handle it, retire quietly. That's what a smart person would do. I drove back to base and requested a meeting with Colonel Thomas Hayes, Dad's old commanding officer, the man he'd expressed doubts about trusting, the only person Dad had told about his investigation. Hayes was 58, silver-haired, with the kind of lean build that came from a lifetime of physical discipline. His office was decorated with photos from 30 years of service. I recognized Dad in several of them: young men in desert camouflage, smiling like they owned the world, brothers in arms. I set Dad's rifle case on his desk. Hayes stared at it like I'd brought a ghost into his office. "Where did you get that?" "Found it in a cave in Colorado, along with Michael Brennan's investigation into General Vance." Hayes closed his office door, sat down heavily, looked older suddenly. "Your father came to me 3 years ago with allegations, serious allegations. I told him to stand down. The evidence wasn't sufficient. Vance is untouchable without ironclad proof." "You were right. The evidence isn't sufficient, but it points to a meeting in Afghanistan, Vance protecting a high-value target who's actually his intel buyer. There's a SEAL team being deployed next week for a direct action raid to secure that target." Hayes nodded slowly. "I'm aware of the operation. They're being set up to die. Vance will leak their position to protect his buyer, just like he's done 27 times before." The silence stretched between us. Hayes looked at the photos on his wall, at the young men who'd trusted him. Some of them were in Dad's list of the dead. "What are you proposing?" "Insert me as independent overwatch. High-altitude surveillance. I watch the SEALs, provide counter-sniper support if needed, and document everything. If Vance compromises the mission, I'll have proof. If the HVT is who Dad thought he is, I'll have evidence. Either way, I keep those SEALs alive." "You're 44 years old. Administrative staff. You haven't been operational in 6 years. I can still shoot better than anyone in this building. You know it. Dad knew it. That's why his last note was to me." Hayes studied me for a long moment, seeing something I couldn't name. "If you do this and you're wrong, your career is over. If you're right and Vance finds out, you'll end up like your father. Are you prepared for that?" Dad spent 3 years investigating while I was too angry at him to speak. We never reconciled. I never told him I understood why he pushed me so hard, why he trained me like I was going to war every single day of my childhood. I thought he was trying to make me into something I didn't want to be. I paused, let the weight of 3 years of regret settle. Turns out he was preparing me for this exact moment, to finish what he couldn't. "So yes, Colonel, I'm prepared." Hayes picked up his phone, made a call, spoke quietly. When he hung up, he looked tired. "SEAL Team 7 deploys in 72 hours. Lieutenant David Chen commanding. Young team, early to mid-20s. They requested Tier 1 sniper support. I'm assigning you as independent surveillance element. Compartmented. Chen won't know you're there until you need to reveal yourself. Your mission is surveillance and documentation. Counter-sniper support only if absolutely necessary. And if I find evidence of Vance's corruption. You bring it to me, nobody else. If you're right about this, half the officers in the chain of command could be compromised. Trust nobody. I picked up Dad's rifle case. The weight of it felt right, familiar, like coming home after a long absence. One more thing, Colonel. Dad's note said trust no one above Colonel. Did he mean rank level, or did he mean you specifically? Hayes met my eyes, no flinch, no hesitation. I've been asking myself that question for 3 years. I don't know, but I'm giving you this mission anyway. Because if your father was right and I did nothing, I couldn't live with that. And if he was wrong about me, you'll find out soon enough. It wasn't reassurance, but it was honest. I could work with honest. The mission briefing happened 2 days later. I wasn't invited. I stood outside the conference room and listened through the door. Lieutenant Chen had the kind of voice that carried. Confident. Precise. The voice of someone who'd never failed at anything important. The intelligence summary was straightforward. High-value target confirmed at a compound in the Kunar province. Foreign fighter coordinating with local Taliban elements. Direct action raid to capture or kill. Standard SEAL mission profile. In and out in under 2 hours. What they didn't mention was that the HVT was General Vance's intel buyer, that the mission was potentially compromised before it started, that they might be walking into an ambush designed to eliminate witnesses. I made my own preparations. High-altitude, low-opening parachute insertion. Landing zone at 9,500 feet elevation. The SEALs would insert at 70,000 feet, closer to the target. I'd be above them, watching, invisible, just like Dad had taught me. The night before deployment, I went to the range. 300 meters, 600, 900, 1200, 1500, 1800, every shot center mass. The rifle felt like an extension of my body. Dad's rifle. The one he'd carried for 20 years before he died. The one he'd left for me to find. I'm ready, Dad, whatever comes next. The insertion went clean. HAHO jump at 25,000 feet. Oxygen mask. Sub-zero temperatures. 17 minutes of controlled descent through darkness. I landed in a boulder field at the tree line, 9,800 feet above sea level. The SEALs were 3 miles southeast, lower elevation, closer to the target. I cached my parachute and began the movement to my observation position. Slow, methodical, every step calculated. At 44, I couldn't move as fast as I did at 25, but I could move smarter, more efficiently, reading terrain like a language I'd studied my entire life. It took 6 hours to reach the position I wanted. A rock formation with clear sight lines to the valley below and the surrounding ridges. I set up my hide, camouflaged my position, and settled in to wait. The SEALs made contact with me via secure radio at 0400. Lieutenant Chen's voice was all business. Any station, this is Griffin 6. Conducting comms check. How copy? I didn't respond. My mission was surveillance, compartmented. They didn't know I existed. Over the next 24 hours, I watched them move through the valley. 12 operators. Young, fit, professional. They moved well. Good tactical discipline. But they were loud. Not physically loud. Energetically loud. The way young soldiers are when they haven't learned that confidence and caution aren't opposites. I mapped their route, noted their positions, watched their patrol patterns, and I watched the surrounding terrain for threats they might miss. At hour 26, I found the first enemy sniper position, northern ridgeline, approximately 1,900 meters from the SEALs' planned assault position. Good concealment, excellent fields of fire, a team of at least 2 shooters, maybe 3. I keyed my radio, sent an encrypted burst transmission to Lieutenant Chen's frequency. Griffin 6, this is Overwatch. Contacts Northern Ridge, 1,900 meters from your position. Enemy sniper team. Recommend delay assault until neutralized. Silence, then Chen's voice, confused and irritated. Overwatch, identify yourself. We have no sniper support assigned to this mission. Classified surveillance element. Colonel Hayes authorized. You have enemy snipers positioned to ambush your assault. Recommend you hold position. Negative, Overwatch. We don't have visual on any enemy positions at that range. Stay off this net unless you have confirmed targets. He cut the transmission. Young, confident, certain that his training and his team were enough. I'd been the same way once, before I learned that the enemy gets a vote. I stayed on the net, kept watching. The SEALs continued their advance. 30 minutes later, the enemy snipers opened fire. The first round impacted 6 inches from Lieutenant Chen's head, fragmenting against rock. The second round hit one of his operators in the plate carrier. Ceramic plate stopped the round, but the impact dropped him hard. The rest of the team scrambled for cover while bullets cracked through the air around them. Chen's voice came over the radio, panicked now, the confidence gone. Contact, taking fire from extreme range. Cannot identify shooter positions. Multiple impacts. Estimate 2,000 meters or more, we can't reach them. His second in command, a chief warrant officer named Marcus Webb, was shouting in the background. Northern Ridgeline has to be, but that's way beyond our capability. We need specialized support. Chen again, frustrated, desperate. Enemies at 2,000 meters. That's beyond our equipment range, beyond our training. There's no time for extract. We're pinned. I'd been waiting 28 hours, watching them, listening to them dismiss my warning. Now they were learning what Dad had tried to teach me when I was young. Experience matters, preparation matters, and sometimes the help you need comes from the people you least expect. I emerged from the fog bank that had concealed my position since dawn, walked directly toward the cluster of rocks where the SEALs had taken cover. Several of them saw me approaching, confusion on their faces. A woman in full kit, carrying a rifle that looked like it belonged in a museum, appearing out of nowhere like some kind of mountain spirit. One of the younger SEALs started to challenge my presence, raise weapon, demand identification. I ignored him, just walked past, dropped into a stable shooting position on the most solid rock formation available, pulled Dad's rifle into a firing stance, and said 4 words that would change everything. I've got the distance. Lieutenant Chen stared at me like I'd grown a second head. Young, Asian American, probably 27, 28. The kind of operator who'd never questioned his abilities because he'd never been in a situation where his abilities weren't enough. Who the hell are you, and how did you get here? I was already setting up, checking the scope, ranging targets, my movements economical, professional, the muscle memory of 10,000 repetitions. Staff Sergeant Sarah Brennan, independent surveillance element. I've been in these mountains for 28 hours. I'm your counter-sniper support. Where are the shooters? Counter-sniper support. We didn't request any support. This mission is Tier 1 classified. Lieutenant, you have enemy snipers engaging your team from approximately 2,000 meters. I tried to warn you. You told me to stay off the net. Now you need someone who can shoot at that distance. That's what I do. So where are they? Chief Webb pointed toward the northern ridgeline, older than Chen, late 30s maybe, combat weathered, the kind of operator who'd seen enough to know when to listen. Northern ridge, elevation above us. We've been taking accurate fire but can't identify exact positions. They're hitting us from beyond our effective range, way beyond. I pulled out my rangefinder, began scanning methodically, found them almost immediately. 3 positions, staggered along the ridgeline at 1900, 2100, and 2300 meters. How many shooters? At least 3, maybe more. They've been firing sporadically for about 10 minutes. Got one of my guys, didn't penetrate but he's hurt bad. Have they been repositioning between shots? Webb nodded. Hard to tell with the fog rolling in and out, but yeah, they shoot and move, professional. I ranged each position precisely, calculated holdovers. Wind was 12 miles per hour from the northwest, temperature 54 degrees, humidity high, elevation 8,300 feet, all factors that affected bullet trajectory at extreme range. Lieutenant, I need your team to stay in hard cover for the next 15 minutes. No movement, no return fire. Let them think you're pinned and waiting for extraction. That'll make them confident, less careful about exposure. Chen studied me, trying to figure out who I was, what I was doing here, whether to trust me. Sergeant, with all respect, who authorized you to be here? Colonel Hayes at Task Force Headquarters. My mission is compartmented. You weren't briefed on my presence because I'm supposed to be invisible, but circumstances changed when your team came under fire from extreme range. Now I'm your best option for dealing with the problem. Webb spoke up, the voice of experience questioning the impossible. Ma'am, no disrespect, but those enemy snipers are at 2,000 meters or more. That's beyond effective range for most shooters. What makes you think you can engage at that distance? I finished my rifle setup, looked at Webb with eyes that had seen this movie before. Chief, my longest confirmed kill is 2,450 meters. I'm certified for extreme long-range interdiction. 2,000 meters is well within my capability. Now let me do my job. I returned to my scope, began the waiting game. The SEALs stayed in cover, watching this mysterious sniper who'd appeared from nowhere and claimed she could make shots they considered nearly impossible. Some skeptical, some hopeful, all confused. For 8 minutes, nothing happened. The fog rolled in thick, cutting visibility to less than 500 meters. Then the wind shifted. The fog cleared for maybe 30 seconds, and I saw him. Enemy sniper, northern ridgeline, partially concealed behind rocks at approximately 2,100 meters, setting up for another shot, confident that the fog concealed him from return fire. I have visual on one shooter, northern ridgeline, 2,100 meters, stand by. I ranged him precisely, 2,147 meters, 1.22 miles. I pulled out my handheld weather station, checked conditions one final time, input data into my ballistic calculator. The solution came back, 41.8 minutes of angle elevation, 7.6 minutes windage. Bullet flight time approximately 3.1 seconds. I made the adjustments, settled into perfect shooting position. Through the optic, the enemy sniper was a small figure, barely recognizable as human at over a mile distance. Just a shape with a rifle, a threat to the men I was here to protect. I controlled my breathing, found the natural respiratory pause between exhale and inhale. The moment of perfect stillness. My finger took up trigger slack, held the crosshairs on target with calculated holdover for bullet drop and wind drift. The rifle fired. The recoil was substantial, 338 Lapua Magnum, but I rode it perfectly, stayed in the scope to observe impact. 3.1 seconds of flight time, an eternity and an instant. Through my scope, I saw the enemy sniper collapse. Hit, target down at 2147 meters. The SEALs who'd been watching through binoculars and rifle optics stared in silence. They just witnessed something most of them considered impossible. A first-round hit on a human target at nearly 1.25 miles. Lieutenant Chen found his voice first, shock and awe competing for dominance. Confirmed. Enemy sniper is down. You actually just hit a target from over 1 mile away. I worked the bolt, chambered a fresh round, kept my eye in the scope. That's one. You said at least 3 shooters. I'm scanning for the others. The fog was rolling back in, obscuring visibility, but I'd learned to read this terrain during my 28 hours watching. I knew where the good shooting positions were, knew how professional snipers thought, knew they'd have backup positions pre-ranged and prepared. 4 minutes later, another fog break. Brief window of maybe 20 seconds. I found the second shooter, 2,300 meters, further west along the ridgeline, already relocating after hearing his partner's shot impact. Second target acquired, 2,300 meters, moving. I ran the calculations, adjusted for greater distance and different wind angle. The target was moving slowly, repositioning equipment, maybe 10 seconds before he'd be back in solid cover. I fired. 3.2 seconds of flight. The second enemy sniper dropped. 2 down, scanning for additional threats. Chief Webb was looking at me now, with something close to reverence. Sergeant, those were the 2 best shots I've ever seen. You're making 2,000-meter kills look routine. At these distances, it's just math, Chief. Measure the variables accurately, calculate correctly, execute the fundamentals. The distance is just another variable to account for. But I was lying. It wasn't just math. It was 10,000 hours of practice. It was Dad dragging me to the range in rain and snow and 100-degree heat. It was him making me shoot until my shoulders ached and my hands cramped. It was every argument we had about why I needed to be better than good, why good enough wasn't enough. He'd been preparing me for this moment, for the day when 12 young warriors would need someone who could make impossible shots, when lives would depend on calculations I could do in my sleep. Thanks, Dad. I finally get why you pushed so hard. Lieutenant Chen keyed his radio, called back to headquarters, his voice steady again now, professional. Griffin 6 to Tactical Operations Center. Be advised, we have counter-sniper support on station. 2 enemy snipers neutralized at extreme range. Continuing mission. The SEAL team began moving again, advancing toward their objective, the compound where the enemy commander was believed to be located. I displaced from my position, moved with them at a distance, staying elevated to maintain overwatch capability. As they advanced, Chen fell back to move alongside me, close enough to talk without radio. His expression was different now, respect competing with curiosity. Sergeant, I need to know what your capabilities are. Are you just here for counter-sniper work, or can you provide ongoing support? I can provide whatever support you need, Lieutenant. Counter-sniper is my specialty, but I'm qualified for all aspects of precision fire. If you need precision engagement at any distance up to 2,500 meters, I can deliver. What about closer ranges? If we hit resistance at 500 to 800 meters? I'm trained on all engagement distances. My rifle is optimized for extreme range, but I can make shots at any distance. Just tell me what you need eliminated and give me good sight lines. Chen nodded, processing, recalculating his tactical plan now that he had an asset he didn't know existed. Copy that. Stay in Overwatch. We're approaching the compound now. Rules of engagement are capture if possible, kill if necessary. But our priority is documentation. We need proof of who this HVT is meeting with. That's my priority too, Lieutenant. That's why I'm here. We continued moving through the mountainous terrain, the fog still rolling in and out, sometimes providing concealment, sometimes exposing us on open slopes. At 44, I couldn't move as fast as these young SEALs, but I could move smarter, choosing routes that required less energy, reading terrain to minimize exposure, moving like someone who understood that speed without efficiency just gets you tired. 20 minutes later, we reached an observation point overlooking the compound. Chen glassed the target through high-powered binoculars while I scanned with my rifle scope. The compound sat in a valley approximately 1,400 meters from our position. Multiple buildings, defensive walls, at least 20 enemy fighters visible in various locations, and in the center courtyard 2 men in conversation. One I recognized from the intelligence photos as the target, the other was older, Western features, expensive outdoor gear that looked out of place in rural Afghanistan. I keyed my radio, direct channel to Colonel Hayes. Overwatch to Control. I have eyes on the HVT, confirming he is meeting with a Western male, approximately 60 years old, 6 feet tall. Request imagery intelligence to identify. Hayes's voice came back, tense. Overwatch copy. Sending facial recognition query now. Stand by. Lieutenant Chen glassed the same 2 figures, saw what I was seeing. That's not a Taliban fighter. That's a Westerner. What the hell is he doing here? That lieutenant is the whole reason we're here. That man is why my father died. The radio crackled, Hayes's voice, carefully controlled. Overwatch control. Facial recognition confirms. Western male is identified as Martin Cross, former CIA operations officer, retired 8 years ago. Current status unknown. If he's meeting with your HVT, this just became significantly more complicated. I watched through my scope as Cross handed the Taliban commander a satellite phone. They spoke for several minutes. Then Cross pointed toward the northern approach, the route the SEALs would take for their assault. He's briefing the HVT on expected assault vectors. He knows we're coming. Chen heard it too, saw it too. His voice was ice. How does he know our mission profile? Because someone told him, Lieutenant. Someone with access to your operation order. Someone who wants you dead and the evidence buried. That's when the ambush was supposed to happen. When the SEALs assaulted the compound and walked into pre-positioned machine gun fire. When they all died and the investigation into General Vance died with them. But I was here. Dad's rifle in my hands. Dad's training in my muscle memory. And I wasn't going to let these young warriors die to protect a traitor. Lieutenant Chen, I count 3 positions that concern me. Guard tower northeast corner. Machine gun position on the main building roof. Fighting position on the western wall. I can engage all 3 from here. But once I start shooting, they'll know they're under attack. You'll need to move fast. How fast can you engage all 3 positions? Give me 2 minutes to pre-range and calculate firing solutions. Then I can engage all 3 in under 60 seconds. Chen looked at his team, at Chief Webb, at the young operators who trusted him to bring them home alive, then back at me, this woman who'd appeared from nowhere and just saved them from a sniper ambush. Do it. When you finish the 3rd shot, we'll begin our assault. And Sergeant, thank you for being here. I spent the next 2 minutes in careful preparation, ranged each position precisely. Guard tower, 1437 meters. Machine gun position, 1485 meters. Western fighting position, 1392 meters. Calculated ballistic solutions for all 3, accounted for different ranges and angles. mentally mapped the engagement sequence. Tower first to eliminate observation. Machine gun second to remove heavy weapons. Fighting position third because reaction time would be slowest. Ready, on your signal, I'll engage all three positions in sequence. Estimate 50 seconds from first shot to third shot. Chen positioned his team, stacked for immediate assault, waiting. Execute when ready. I settled into position, perfect fundamentals, placed my crosshairs on the guard tower sentry with proper holdover, and I thought about Dad, about all the times he made me practice shot sequences, multiple targets, rapid engagement, transitioning between positions while maintaining accuracy. I'd hated that training, thought it was excessive, thought he was pushing too hard. Now 12 lives depended on it. I fired, the sentry in the guard tower dropped. I worked the bolt smoothly, swung the rifle to the machine gun position, fired. The machine gunner collapsed across his weapon, worked the bolt, shifted to the western fighting position, selected the most exposed target among multiple fighters, fired. Third shot connected, enemy fighter tumbling backward. 52 seconds, close enough. All three positions engaged, tower clear, machine gun neutralized, western position disrupted, Griffin 6 execute assault. Chen's team moved, fast and professional, down the slope toward the compound at a tactical sprint. I stayed in overwatch, scanning for threats through my scope, watching them approach while enemy fighters inside were still processing what just happened. An enemy fighter appeared on the main building's roof, rifle raised, aiming at the approaching SEALs. Range 1450 meters. I engaged, target down before he could fire. Another fighter emerged from a building, running toward the unmanned machine gun. Range 1470 meters. I engaged, target dropped. I was doing what Dad had trained me for, providing precision overwatch, eliminating threats before they could threaten the people I was protecting. At these ranges, the enemy had no idea where shots were coming from. They just saw their teammates collapsing from invisible fire. The SEAL team breached the compound wall, began room-to-room clearing. I kept scanning, looking for threats, saw movement on a rooftop approximately 200 meters from the SEAL position. Enemy fighter with an RPG launcher, positioning to fire at the Americans. Range 1630 meters from my position. I ranged, calculated, fired. Under 5 seconds from identification to shot, the RPG gunner collapsed before he could launch. Griffin 6, this is Overwatch. Just eliminated an RPG gunner on the northern building rooftop. You had a rocket about to come your way. Chen's voice came back, breathing hard from the assault, but alive. Overwatch Griffin 6. Good shooting, we're continuing clearance. For the next 15 minutes, I provided precision overwatch while the SEAL team cleared the compound. 7 more enemy fighters eliminated, all at ranges between 1400 and 1700 meters. All threats to the team, all prevented before they could engage. Finally, Chen's voice. Overwatch Griffin 6, compound secure. HVT is confirmed in custody. Western male fled during the assault. We're conducting sensitive site exploitation. Evidence collected, ready to extract when you are. I displaced from my position, moved down to link up with them at the compound. It took 30 minutes to cover the terrain. My body was tired, 44 years old, 28 hours in the mountains, multiple precision shots under stress. I felt every year, every old injury, every mile. But I was alive, they were alive, and we had the evidence. When I entered the compound, the SEALs were organized around their captured HVT. Taliban commander zip-tied and hooded. Lieutenant Chen approached me. His expression had transformed. the skepticism gone, replaced by something like awe. Sergeant Brennan, I counted 11 enemy killed by your fire during this operation. Every single one of those shots prevented a threat to my team. You saved multiple lives today. Just doing my job, Lieutenant. Your job, he shook his head. Most snipers can't shoot like that. Where did you train? Special Operations Sniper Course. Then advanced long-range training at a facility I can't discuss. I've been doing extreme distance work for about 20 years. Chief Webb joined us, the old veteran's respect visible. Ma'am, Sergeant, I've worked with a lot of snipers in my career. What you did today, the shooting at 2,000+ meters and then the sustained precision fire during our assault, that's the finest shooting I've ever witnessed. I thought about Dad, about the rifle in my hands, about the training that made this possible. My father taught me every shot, every technique. He pushed me harder than I thought I could handle. I resented him for it. We barely spoke the last few years of his life, but he was preparing me for this, for the day when good men would need someone who could make impossible shots. Chen nodded slowly, then his expression changed, became more serious. Sergeant, there's something you need to know. We found documents in the compound. Communications between the HVT and someone he refers to as the General. Mission details. Assault plans. Our operation order was in there. Someone with high-level access provided our enemy with everything he needed to kill us. I know, Lieutenant. That's what my father was investigating when he died. That's why I'm here, to finish what he started. The extraction helicopters arrived 20 minutes later, pulled the SEAL team, the prisoner, and me out of the area. During the flight back to base, several of the younger SEALs approached me with questions about the shooting, the training, the equipment. I answered professionally, but kept my distance. Some mysteries are more useful than explanations. When we landed at the forward operating base, I was met by Colonel Hayes. His expression was grim. Sergeant Brennan, I've been monitoring the operation. Your shooting was exceptional. 11 confirmed kills at extreme range, critical saves that prevented SEAL casualties, but we have a problem. Sir, General Vance knows what happened. He knows the operation succeeded. He knows you were there. And he's already started asking questions about who authorized an independent sniper element on a classified SEAL mission. I handed Hayes the captured documents, the intelligence that proved the Taliban commander had received American operational plans. Then it's time to give him some answers, Colonel, starting with why he's selling our people to the enemy. Hayes looked at the documents, at the evidence his old friend had died gathering, at the mission that was supposed to end with 12 dead SEALs and buried proof. Sarah, your father would be proud of what you did today. I felt something crack inside. 3 years of anger and regret and unfinished business. 3 years of questions I could never ask, apologies I could never make. I hope so, sir, because I'm just getting started. And before this is over, everyone who had a hand in killing Michael Brennan is going to answer for it. Hayes nodded, handed me back Dad's rifle. Then finish it. Finish what Shepard started. Because if you don't, a lot of good soldiers are going to keep dying, and their families will spend the rest of their lives wondering why. I took the rifle, felt its weight, its history, its purpose. Roger that, Colonel. The flock needs protection. Time to show them what Shepard's daughter can do. The mission was just beginning. The evidence was only partial. And somewhere out there, General Vance was realizing that the woman who'd saved those SEALs was the same woman whose father he'd murdered. The hunt was on, and I was no longer prey. I was Shepard's daughter, and the old breed was about to teach the corrupt a lesson they'd never forget. Some legacies are written in blood, some are written in honor. Mine was written in both. And I was just getting started. The 2147-meter shot dropped the first enemy sniper. The 2300-meter shot dropped his spotter. The third shot, at 2089 meters while the target was moving to cover, dropped the team leader. Lieutenant Chen's voice came over the radio, shaking with something between disbelief and reverence. Confirmed, all 3 targets neutralized. Who are you? What are you? I worked the bolt one more time, chambered a fresh round, kept scanning the ridgeline through my scope. I'm Shepard's daughter, and you're about to learn why that name meant something. The words came out before I thought about them. Shepard, the call sign Dad had carried for 23 years, the legend that followed him through Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria. The name other snipers spoke with respect and younger soldiers spoke with awe. I'd spent my entire adult life running from that shadow, refusing to use it, refusing to acknowledge that I was anything like him. But here, at 44 years old, with 3 impossible shots just made and 12 young warriors alive because of them, the name felt right, felt earned, felt like coming home to something I didn't know I'd been missing. Lieutenant Chen moved closer, close enough to see my face clearly, close enough to read the expression that said I was dead serious about everything happening here. Sergeant Brennan, I owe you an apology and probably my life. We all do. Save it, Lieutenant. You didn't know I was here. Colonel Hayes compartmented my mission for operational security, but there's something you need to know about why you're really here. Chen's expression shifted, from gratitude to concern in about 2 seconds. What do you mean, why we're really here? We're conducting a direct action raid on a confirmed HVT. Your HVT is General Vance's intelligence buyer. The man you saw meeting with him, Martin Cross, is former CIA. He's been purchasing classified operational intelligence for 8 years, selling it to whoever pays. Your mission was supposed to end with all of you dead and the evidence buried. Chen looked like I'd hit him in the chest with a rifle round. That's impossible. General Vance is a 3-star. He's the commander of Special Operations Forces Europe. His record is spotless. My father spent 3 years investigating him, documented 27 instances where American soldiers died because their operational plans were sold to the enemy. Vance had my father killed to protect his network. Now he's trying to do the same thing to you. Chief Webb had been listening. The older SEAL moved closer now, his weathered face thoughtful. Ma'am, Sergeant, those are serious allegations. If you're wrong, careers end. If you're right and word gets out before we have proof, we all end up like your father. I pulled out the documents I'd taken from the compound, the intelligence that showed their operation order in enemy hands before they'd even left base. Here's your proof, Chief. Your mission planning, route, timing, assault positions, all in the hands of the Taliban commander you just captured. Someone with access to classified SEAL operations gave this to the enemy. The only person with motive is Vance. Chen took the documents, read them. His face went hard. This is my handwriting on the route plan. This was written 2 days ago in a secure facility. How did it get here? That's what we're going to find out, Lieutenant. But first, we need to keep you and your team alive long enough to make it matter. Webb spoke up, the voice of experience asking the critical question. What do you need from us? Continue the mission. Document everything. The HVT in custody, the intelligence materials, Cross's presence at the compound. Build an airtight case. I'll provide overwatch and make sure nobody dies in the process. And if Vance finds out what we're doing, Then we make sure we're in public view with too many witnesses when he tries to stop us. Sunlight is the best disinfectant. We expose him before he can eliminate us. Chen looked at his team, 12 young operators watching this conversation, realizing they'd walked into something bigger and darker than a simple direct action raid. He made a decision, the kind leaders make when there's no good option and hesitation gets people killed. We continue mission. Document everything. Treat this like the evidence collection operation it apparently is. Sergeant Brennan provides overwatch and counter sniper support. We extract with the HVT and all collected intelligence. Then we figure out who to trust with what we've found. I nodded. Good call. The kind of tactical adjustment that kept teams alive. One more thing, Lieutenant. My father's investigation indicated Colonel Hayes might be compromised. He served with Vance in Desert Storm. They're old friends. I don't know if he's part of the corruption or just being used. Either way, be careful who you brief when we get back. That complicates things. Hayes is your commanding officer. He authorized your mission. I know, which means either he's testing me to see if I'll find what my father found, or he's setting me up to die the same way. I'm gambling on the first option, but I'm not betting your lives on it. The team spent the next 3 hours conducting sensitive site exploitation, photographing everything, collecting documents, electronic devices, communications equipment, building a case that would be impossible to ignore or dismiss. I maintained overwatch from elevated positions, scanning for threats. As the sun dropped toward the western ridges, casting long shadows across the valley, I thought about Dad, about the 3 years he'd spent gathering evidence while I refused his calls, while I held onto anger about a childhood I thought was too harsh, too demanding, too focused on perfection I couldn't achieve. He'd been trying to protect me, trying to prepare me for the moment when I'd be the only thing standing between good men and death. Every harsh word, every impossible standard, every time he pushed me past my limits, all of it was for this. I'm sorry, Dad. I should have trusted you, should have listened, should have understood. The extraction helicopters arrived at dusk. 2 Blackhawks with door gunners scanning for threats. We loaded the team, the prisoner, and the captured intelligence. I was last on, rifle in hand, scanning the ridgeline one final time for threats that might materialize. During the flight back to the forward operating base, Chief Webb moved to sit beside me, shouting over the rotor noise. "Ma'am, I need to tell you something about your father." I looked at him, waiting. I served with Shepard in Ramadi, 2006, worst urban fighting of the Iraq War. We were taking casualties daily, couldn't move 2 blocks without getting hit. Your father was embedded with our platoon as sniper support. Webb paused, remembering something painful. We got ambushed in the Malab district. Kill zone. Insurgents had us pinned in a building, 3 wounded, no way out. Radio compromised so we couldn't call for help. We were going to die there. What happened? Your father climbed to a roof position under fire. Spent 4 hours eliminating insurgents at ranges from 800 to 1,500 meters. Cleared an escape route. Then carried our most seriously wounded man 2 miles back to friendly lines. Saved 8 lives that day, mine included. Webb looked at me with eyes that had seen too much death. He never talked about it, never put himself in for a medal, just did the job. That's who Shepard was, not the legend, not the record shots, just a man who protected his people no matter what it cost him. I felt something crack inside, the last piece of anger toward Dad breaking apart. Thank you for telling me, Chief. Ma'am, what you did today, the shooting at 2,000+ meters, the way you protected us even though we dismissed you, that's exactly what Shepard would have done. You're more like him than you probably want to admit. Maybe that's not such a bad thing after all. We landed at the forward operating base 40 minutes later. Colonel Hayes was waiting on the tarmac with 2 intelligence officers and a JAG lawyer. His expression was unreadable. "Sergeant Brennan, Lieutenant Chen, we need to debrief immediately. The intelligence you collected is generating significant interest at higher levels." I'll bet it is, I thought, especially if those higher levels include General Vance. The debriefing lasted 6 hours. We went through everything: the compound layout, the enemy forces engaged, the documents recovered, Martin Cross's presence and his meeting with the HVT, the operational plans that somehow ended up in enemy hands. Hayes asked pointed questions, professional, thorough, but I watched his reactions, watched how he processed information about the leaked operation order, watched his face when we mentioned Cross by name. He was surprised, genuinely surprised, which meant either he was an exceptional actor or he really didn't know about Vance's network. I chose to believe the latter. Call it faith, call it desperation, call it the fact that I needed at least one senior officer I could trust or this whole thing fell apart. When the debrief concluded, Hayes dismissed everyone except me. We sat alone in the secure conference room. The silence stretched between us like a test. "Sarah, your father came to me 3 years ago with evidence against Vance. I told him it wasn't enough, that he needed more proof, that going after a 3-star general without ironclad documentation would destroy both of our careers and accomplish nothing. And he went to Colorado to get that proof, and died." Hayes nodded slowly, his face aging 10 years in 10 seconds. "I've spent 3 years wondering if I sent him to his death. If I'd supported him instead of telling him to stand down, maybe he'd still be alive. Maybe those 27 soldiers would have been saved. Maybe none of this would have happened. Or maybe Vance would have killed both of you and buried the evidence even deeper." Hayes looked at me with something like gratitude for the absolution I didn't know I was offering. "You made 3 shots today that I wouldn't have believed possible if I hadn't seen the after-action footage. You saved 12 SEALs from an ambush they didn't know was coming. You collected evidence that connects directly to your father's investigation. You did in one day what it took him 3 years to accomplish. I had his rifle, his training, his mission to finish, and I wasn't working alone, I had a team." Hayes slid a folder across the table. 3 more operations over the next 2 weeks. SEAL Team 7 is being tasked with direct action raids on high-value targets in the region. Each mission has been approved at the 3-star level, which means each mission might be compromised the moment the orders are cut. You want me to provide overwatch for all of them. I want you to keep those young warriors alive while we build a case against Vance that even the Pentagon can't ignore. Can you do that?" I opened the folder, studied the mission profiles, different locations, different targets, but the same risk, the same potential for betrayal from above. "I can do it, but I need something from you, Colonel." "Name it." "Complete operational independence. I choose my positions. I choose my engagement parameters. I report directly to you and nobody else. No questions about where I am or what I'm doing, just results." Hayes considered, weighed the risk of giving that much autonomy to a staff sergeant with a personal vendetta. "Approved, but Sarah, if this goes wrong, I can't protect you. Vance has connections all the way to the Secretary of Defense. He'll destroy you and claim it was justified." "Then I better not let it go wrong." Over the next 14 days, I supported 3 more SEAL operations, each time inserted alone via high-altitude parachute drop. each time establishing overwatch positions at elevations above 9,500 feet. Each time watching the young warriors of SEAL Team 7 move through enemy territory, while I provided the invisible shield between them and death. Operation 2 was a compound raid in the Petch River Valley. Enemy forces positioned at ranges from 1,600 to 1,900 meters. I eliminated 6 threats before the SEALs even made contact. Clean shots, professional kills. The enemy never knew what hit them. Operation 3 was a vehicle interdiction on a mountain road. Enemy reinforcements approaching from multiple directions. I engaged targets at ranges from 1,800 to 2,200 meters. 8 confirmed kills. The SEALs completed their mission without taking fire. Operation 4 was a hostage rescue in a village near the Pakistan border. Complex terrain. Civilians present. High risk of collateral damage. I eliminated 5 enemy fighters at ranges from 1,700 to 2,300 meters. Every shot precise. Every kill preventing a threat to either the SEALs or the hostages. After each mission, I saw the same transformation in the young operators. The initial skepticism replaced by trust. The dismissive comments about age replaced by questions about technique. The doubt replaced by confidence that Shepard's daughter had their backs. On the 8th day, after the 3rd operation, Lieutenant Chen approached me at the temporary operations base. We'd moved to a more secure location deeper in friendly territory. Somewhere Vance's network would have harder time reaching. Sergeant Brennan, the team wants to talk to you, unofficial, off the record. About what? About why you're really here, about your father, about what we've gotten ourselves into. We gathered in a maintenance hangar after dark, all 12 SEALs plus me. Chief Webb spoke for the group. Ma'am, we've been operating together for 2 weeks now. You've saved our lives multiple times, made shots we thought were impossible, never asked for recognition or credit, just did the job. We trust you, but we need to understand the full picture. What are we fighting for here? I told them everything. About Dad's investigation, about the 27 soldiers who died because their missions were sold, about the 3 years I spent angry at him for pushing me too hard, only to realize he was preparing me for exactly this moment, about finding his rifle and his final message, about the choice to finish what he started or walk away. When I finished, the room was silent. Then one of the younger SEALs spoke up. Corporal Danny Rodriguez, 23 years old, reminded me of myself at that age, idealistic, determined, still believing the system worked if you just followed the rules. Ma'am, my brother died in Afghanistan in 2017. Convoy ambush. They said it was bad luck. Wrong place, wrong time. Was his name on your father's list? I'd memorized every name, every date, every circumstance. Corporal Miguel Rodriguez, October 14, 2017, Route Clearwater. Convoy hit by complex ambush with perfect timing and positioning. Enemy forces pre-positioned with knowledge of convoy route and timing. Danny's face went hard, grief and rage competing for dominance. They knew we were coming. Someone told them. Yes, I'm sorry. Another SEAL spoke. Petty Officer 2nd Class James Chen. No relation to Lieutenant Chen, but similar determination in his eyes. My father served in Iraq, Purple Heart, Bronze Star, came home with PTSD and never recovered, killed himself in 2013. He used to say the worst part wasn't the combat. It was knowing that someone higher up was making decisions that got good men killed for no reason. He never had proof, just a feeling. Was he right? I don't know. My father's investigation focused on the last 8 years. But if the corruption goes back further, if it's been happening longer than we know, then yes, your father might have been right. Lieutenant Chen stood, addressed his team with the kind of authority that earns respect rather than demands it. Here's what we know. General Vance has been selling American lives for profit. Sergeant Brennan's father died investigating him. We've been inserted into operations that might be compromised from the start. The only reason we're alive is because this woman has been protecting us from threats we couldn't even see. He paused, let that sink in. So here's what we're going to do. We continue the missions. We document everything. We build a case so airtight that even Vance's connections can't save him. And we trust Sergeant Brennan to keep doing what she's been doing, keeping us alive while we expose the bastards who have been killing our brothers for profit. The team nodded. Agreement without discussion. The kind of unit cohesion that comes from shared danger and shared purpose. Chief Webb added one more thing. Ma'am, we know you operate alone, that it's your preferred method, but you should know that from here on out you're not alone anymore. You're part of this team, and we take care of our own. I felt something I hadn't felt in 3 years, maybe longer, a sense of belonging, of family, of purpose beyond personal revenge. Thank you, Chief, all of you. My father taught me that being shepherd means protecting the flock. I'm honored to protect this one. Rodriguez spoke up again, younger, less filtered than the senior operators. Ma'am, if you don't mind me saying, we're starting to call you shepherd in the team, not just Sergeant Brennan. It fits. The way you watch over us, the way you take out threats before they even know we exist. You're carrying on what your father started. I'd spent 20 years refusing that call sign, running from the comparison, insisting I was my own person with my own identity. But here, in this moment, with these young warriors who trusted me with their lives, the name felt different. Not a burden, not a shadow, a legacy, an honor, a responsibility I was ready to accept. You can call me whatever you want, as long as we all make it home alive. But inside, something shifted. I wasn't just Sarah Brennan anymore. I was Shepard's daughter, and maybe, just maybe, I was becoming Shepard herself. The fourth operation came 5 days later. Intelligence indicated a meeting between multiple high-value targets at a compound in the Korangal Valley. The valley the Army called the Valley of Death after years of brutal combat, terrain that favored defenders, approaches that funneled attackers into kill zones. The mission brief was straightforward. Insert at night, observe the meeting, identify all participants, capture or kill if the opportunity presented, extract before dawn. But I saw something in the mission parameters that triggered every alarm bell Dad had trained into me. The insertion route was the same route 3 previous missions had used. The timing was predictable. The supporting assets were minimal. It had all the hallmarks of a setup. I brought my concerns to Colonel Hayes in a private meeting. Sir, this mission feels wrong. The planning is too clean, too predictable. If Vance knows we're building a case against him, this is exactly the kind of mission he'd use to eliminate witnesses. Hayes agreed, but we can't prove it without executing, and if we cancel based on suspicions, we show our hand. Vance knows we're onto him. Then we change the parameters, different insertion route, different timing, and I go in first, 48 hours early, scout the entire area. If there's an ambush waiting, I'll find it. Hayes considered, weighed the risks. Approved. But Sarah, if this is the trap we think it is, you'll be alone in enemy territory with no support and no extraction for 2 days. At your age, in that terrain, the physical demands alone could be fatal. At my age, I know my limits better than any 25-year-old, and I know how to survive alone in mountains. Dad made sure of that. 24 hours later, I was inserted via HAHO jump at 28,000 feet. The oxygen mask kept me conscious. The sub-zero temperatures made every breath painful. The 17-minute descent through darkness gave me plenty of time to think about all the ways this could go wrong. I landed at 10,200 feet, cached my parachute, and began the movement to my observation position overlooking the target compound. It took 8 hours of careful movement through terrain that wanted to kill me. Loose rock, cliff faces, snow fields at altitude that could avalanche without warning. By dawn, I was in position, camouflaged, invisible, scanning the valley below and the surrounding ridges for threats. I found them within 2 hours. Enemy sniper positions, 4 teams, 2 on the northern ridges at ranges from 2,200 to 2,600 meters, 2 on the southern ridges at similar ranges, perfectly positioned to create a crossfire on the compound approaches. Professionally concealed, well supplied, they'd been there for days, waiting. This wasn't a meeting of high-value targets. This was an execution ground. The SEALs were supposed to approach the compound and die in a coordinated ambush from multiple directions. Perfect fields of fire, no escape routes, a killing ground designed by someone who understood how SEALs operated. I keyed my encrypted radio, direct channel to Hayes. Overwatch to control. I have eyes on target area. Compound is abandoned. No high-value targets present, but I count 4 enemy sniper teams positioned for ambush. This is a trap. Recommend abort mission. Hayes's response came back tense. Overwatch control copies, but we have a problem. Mission orders came directly from General Vance's headquarters. If we abort without cause, he'll know we're onto him. Can you neutralize the sniper teams? I studied the positions through my scope. 4 teams, 8 to 12 shooters total, ranges from 2,200 to 2,600 meters, different elevations, different angles, and they were professional. They'd repositioned between observation periods. They were watching for counter-snipers. I can engage, but once I start shooting, they'll know I'm here, and I'll be alone against multiple teams for the next 24 hours until the SEALs arrive. Hayes was silent for a long moment. Sarah, I can't order you to do this. The risk is too high. If you want to extract now, I'll authorize it. I thought about the 12 young SEALs who'd be flying into this kill zone tomorrow. I thought about Rodriguez's brother, about the 27 names on Dad's list, about the 3 years I'd wasted being angry instead of understanding. Negative control. I'm not letting these kids die in an ambush. I'll handle the sniper teams. You get me back up when the SEALs insert tomorrow. Shepherd out. I spent the next 16 hours in preparation, mapping each sniper position, calculating range, elevation, wind conditions for each target, planning the engagement sequence, running through scenarios. The positions were spread across a front of nearly 1,500 meters. Engaging them all would require rapid transitions between targets at vastly different ranges and angles. It would require shooting at distances where most snipers would be happy to hit a target the size of a car. I needed to hit targets the size of a human head to ensure immediate incapacitation. At 44 years old, I was attempting something that would challenge a shooter half my age. But I had one advantage they didn't: 44 years of experience, 23 years of pulling triggers under stress, 10,000 hours of practice on ranges in every condition imaginable, and Dad's voice in my head, calm and certain. You can do this, Katie. You've done harder. Trust your training. Trust yourself. The SEALs inserted the next morning at 0500 hours. 12 operators moving through the valley toward a compound they thought contained high-value targets. I watched them through my scope, young, confident, trusting their training and their leaders. They had no idea they were walking into a kill zone. The enemy sniper teams were watching them too, waiting for the SEALs to enter the optimal engagement range, waiting for the moment when all 12 would be exposed and vulnerable. I wasn't going to let them have that moment. I keyed my radio, spoke directly to Lieutenant Chen on the SEAL tactical net. Griffin 6, this is Shepard. You are approaching a coordinated ambush. 4 enemy sniper teams positioned on surrounding ridges, 22 to 2,600 meters from your position. Recommend immediate halt and hard cover. Chen's voice came back, confused but trusting now. Shepard, Griffin 6, halting movement. Request you engage enemy positions. Roger, engaging now. Stay in cover. This is going to get loud. I settled into my primary firing position. Perfect fundamentals, controlled breathing, mental checklist running through environmental variables, wind, temperature, altitude, barometric pressure, the calculations that separated hits from misses at extreme range. First target, Northern Ridge, 2,247 meters. Enemy spotter observing the valley with binoculars. I ranged him precisely, calculated holdover, placed my crosshairs with massive compensation for bullet drop and wind drift. The rifle fired, 3.1 seconds of flight time. Through my scope I watched the impact. The spotter collapsed. 1 down. I worked the bolt, transitioned to the second position. Northern Ridge, 2,384 meters. Primary sniper now aware something was wrong, starting to scan for the source of the shot that killed his spotter. I fired before he could locate me. 3.2 seconds of flight. Impact, target down. 2 down. Third position, Southern Ridge, 2,508 meters. Hardest shot yet. The sniper was relocating, moving to a secondary position after hearing the distant shots, moving target at over 1.4 miles. I led him, calculated his movement speed, held ahead of his position by what looked like empty air, fired. 3.3 seconds of flight. The bullet intercepted him mid-stride. He went down hard. 3 down. Fourth position, Southern Ridge, 2,612 meters, nearly 1.5 miles. The final enemy sniper had located my position. I could see him through my scope, setting up for a counter sniper shot, racing me to get his rifle on target first. This was the shot that would determine whether the young SEALs lived or died, whether Dad's sacrifice meant something, whether the old breed still had value in modern warfare. I ranged him, 2,612 meters exactly. I input the data into my ballistic calculator. The solution came back, 78.6 minutes of angle elevation, 15.2 minutes windage, bullet flight time 3.4 seconds. At this range, even a perfect shot was more prayer than science. The bullet would drop over 80 feet during flight. Wind could push it 10 feet laterally. Temperature variations could affect velocity enough to miss by feet. But I'd spent 44 years preparing for impossible shots. Spent 10,000 hours learning to read wind in the grass, in the dust, in the way fog moved across ridges. Spent a lifetime building the muscle memory and mental discipline to execute under pressure. I made the adjustments, settled into the shot, found the moment of perfect stillness between heartbeats. Dad, if you're watching, I could use a little help here. I fired. 3.4 seconds of flight time, an eternity, long enough to second-guess every calculation, long enough to wonder if I'd missed a variable, long enough to watch through the scope as the enemy sniper finished his setup and put his eye to his own scope, searching for me. The bullet arrived first, impact center mass. The enemy sniper collapsed across his rifle. 4 down. All enemy sniper positions neutralized. Griffin 6, you are clear to continue mission. Compound is abandoned but recommend you document the ambush setup for evidence. Chen's voice came back, all mixing with disbelief. Shepard, I watched those shots through the spotting scope. You just engaged 4 targets at ranges from 22 to 2,600 meters in under 90 seconds. That's not human. It's just math and practice, Lieutenant. Lots of practice. Now move your team to the compound. Photograph everything. Document the sniper positions. This is the proof we need that Vance set you up. Roger that, and Shepard, thank you. For the 3rd time you saved our lives. That's what Shepards do, protect the flock. The SEALs spent the next 2 hours documenting the ambush site, the enemy sniper positions, the supplies that indicated they'd been waiting for days, the communications equipment that showed they were coordinating with someone. We'd built an ironclad case, multiple operations where intelligence was leaked, multiple ambushes prepared, multiple attempts to kill the SEAL team that was investigating, and now evidence that General Vance had set up an entire mission specifically to eliminate witnesses. The extraction helicopters arrived at 0900. We loaded the team and all the evidence. I was exhausted. 48 hours in the mountains at 10,000 feet. 4 impossible shots. The physical and mental toll of carrying my father's legacy while trying to keep 12 young warriors alive. But we'd done it. We'd built the case. We'd stayed alive. We'd proven that the old breed still mattered. As we lifted off, Chief Webb moved to sit beside me, handed me a bottle of water, spoke quietly. Ma'am, the team took a vote, unofficial, but unanimous. From here on out, you're not just providing overwatch. You're part of Griffin team, part of the family, and we're going to make damn sure you survive to see Vance get what's coming to him. I looked at the 12 young faces surrounding me, the warriors who'd accepted a 44-year-old woman as their protector, who'd trusted me with their lives, who'd become the family I didn't know I needed. I appreciate that, Chief, more than you know. Lieutenant Chen leaned forward from his seat. Shepard, we're going to need a new plan for taking down Vance. The evidence is solid, but he's got connections all the way to the Pentagon. He'll find a way to bury this unless we go public. Big, undeniable. I know, I've been thinking about that. We need to force his hand, make him act in ways he can't deny. Get him on record attempting to cover up or eliminate witnesses. How do we do that? We make him think we're a bigger threat than we are. Make him desperate. Desperate people make mistakes. And when he makes his mistake, we document everything. The helicopter touched down at the forward operating base. We offloaded and headed toward the debriefing room. Colonel Hayes was waiting with an expression I'd never seen before, fear and fury combined. We need to talk, now private. Hayes led me to his office, closed and locked the door, pulled the shades. When he spoke, his voice was barely controlled. General Vance knows what you've been doing, all of it. The counter-sniper work, the evidence collection, the fact that you're Shepard's daughter, he knows, and he just authorized a missile strike on your last known position. My blood went cold. The SEALs, are they? They're fine. The strike hit 30 minutes after you extracted, but Sarah, he tried to kill you and 12 SEALs with a missile, with American assets targeting American forces. That's an act of desperation, which means you're right. We've got him cornered, but cornered animals are the most dangerous. What's our next move? I'm taking the evidence to the Inspector General, to the FBI, to every oversight authority I can find, but Vance will know the moment I do, and he'll come after everyone involved. You, me, the SEALs, anyone who can testify. Then we make sure we're in protective custody before he can act. We go loud with everything at once. No time for him to eliminate witnesses." Hayes nodded, started making calls, setting up meetings, building the coalition that would bring down a 3-star general. I walked out of his office and found the SEAL team waiting in the hallway. They'd heard, they knew, and they were ready. Lieutenant Chen spoke for all of them. "Shepard, wherever this goes next, we're with you, all the way. Your father protected soldiers for 23 years. You've protected us for 2 weeks. Now it's our turn to protect you." I looked at these young warriors, at the family I'd found while finishing my father's mission, at the legacy that had transformed from burden to honor. "Then let's finish this. For my father, for your brothers who died, for every soldier who trusted their leaders and got sold out, let's bring Vance down and make sure this never happens again." The war wasn't over, it was just beginning. But for the first time in 3 years, I wasn't fighting alone. I had a family, I had a purpose. I had the call sign I'd spent a lifetime running from. I was Shepard, and the flock was about to show General Vance what happened when you threaten the family. Some battles are won with bullets, some are won with evidence and exposure. This one would require both. And we were ready, 90 seconds to impact. The math was simple and brutal. The extraction helicopter could carry 7 SEALs plus the captured intelligence, or 6 SEALs plus intelligence plus me. Someone with 44 years of life experience. Someone who'd finally made peace with her father's ghost. Someone who understood that being Shepard meant protecting the flock, no matter the cost. I made the only choice my father would have made. "Griffin 6, get your team on that helicopter. That's an order." Lieutenant Chen's voice came back over the radio, panicked, refusing. "Negative, Shepard. We're not leaving anyone behind. That's our code. Move to the LZ now." "Your code is complete the mission, Lieutenant. That evidence is the mission. My father died for it. I won't let his sacrifice be meaningless. Now get your people on that bird." I was already running, not toward the landing zone, away from it, drawing enemy fire with me, putting distance between the helicopter and the threat closing from 3 directions. The enemy forces that had survived my counter-sniper work were converging, maybe 30 fighters. They'd heard the helicopter rotors. They knew extraction was happening. They were coming to stop it. Chief Webb's voice, raw emotion breaking through professional control. "Shepard, your father taught me that we protect each other first, that nobody gets left behind." I fired on the nearest enemy position. 3 rounds burst from my rifle, dropping a fighter at 400 meters, making myself impossible to ignore, drawing all attention to me and away from the landing zone 800 meters behind me. "No, Chief, he taught you that leaders protect those they lead, even if it costs everything. Now G.O." The missile warning alarm was screaming now. 70 seconds. The helicopter pilot's voice cut through on the command net, professional but urgent. "Griffin 6, we have inbound missile. Impact in 65 seconds. If we don't launch now, nobody survives." Chen made the hardest decision a leader can make, the one that saves the many by abandoning the one. "All Griffin elements, load bird now. Move, move, move." I heard the anguish in his voice, the guilt, the knowledge that leaving me was the right tactical decision and the worst moral choice, but he made it anyway, because that's what leaders do when every option is terrible and hesitation kills everyone. I kept firing, kept moving, putting more distance between myself and the LZ. The enemy was fully committed now, chasing me, trying to close the distance before I could disappear into the mountains. They thought they had me pinned, thought I was running in panic. They didn't know I was running toward the only chance I had, A cave system Dad had mapped 3 years ago. The same caves where he'd hidden his rifle, his final insurance policy. 60 seconds to impact. I could see the contrail now. The missile inbound from somewhere over the border. American-made. Fired by American forces on the authorization of a 3-star general trying to cover up treason by killing his own soldiers. The helicopter lifted off. I watched it climb. Watched it bank hard and accelerate away from the impact zone. Watched 12 young warriors survive because I'd chosen to stay behind. Dad, I finally get it. You didn't push me away. You were teaching me to stand alone when it mattered most. 45 seconds. I was running uphill through loose scree at 8,500 feet elevation, carrying 50 pounds of gear. My lungs burned. My legs screamed. At 44, my body wasn't what it was at 25. Couldn't push the same limits. Couldn't recover as fast. But experience taught me exactly how far I could push before breaking, and I wasn't broken yet. 30 seconds. The cave entrance was visible now, 300 meters ahead. Might as well have been 3 miles. The enemy was closing from behind. Small arms fire cracking past my position. Rounds impacting rock, kicking up dust. I dropped my pack, kept the rifle, kept moving. Every ounce of weight mattered now. Every second counted. 20 seconds, 200 meters to go. My heart rate was maxed. Vision tunneling. Altitude and exertion combining to push me toward the edge of consciousness. The rational part of my brain was screaming to stop, to rest, that I couldn't make it. The part Dad trained told that voice to shut up and keep moving. 15 seconds, 100 meters. I could hear the missile now, the roar of its engine, coming in fast and low, terminal guidance active, locked on the coordinates where the helicopter had been sitting 90 seconds ago. 10 seconds, 50 meters, I threw myself forward, dove through the cave entrance as enemy rounds stitched the ground where I'd been, rolled, scrambled deeper into darkness, put rock between myself and the impact. 5 seconds, 4, 3, 2. The world ended in fire and thunder. The shockwave traveled through rock like a physical blow, slamming me against the cave wall. The entrance collapsed in a roar of falling stone. Dust filled the air. Complete darkness descended as the last light from outside was sealed off by thousands of pounds of broken mountain. I lay in the dark, breathing dust, ears ringing from the blast, body screaming from the sprint at altitude, wondering if I just traded death by missile for death by entombment. Then the emergency lights in my gear activated, dim red glow filling the cave, enough to see that I was alive, trapped, but alive. I keyed my radio, knowing it probably wouldn't reach through all this rock, but trying anyway. Griffin 6, this is Shepard. I'm alive, in the cave system, but the entrance is collapsed. Going to need time to find another way out. Static, no response. The rock was too thick, or my radio was damaged, or the seals were too far away now. It didn't matter. I was alone, exactly where Dad's training had prepared me to be. I took inventory, rifle, sidearm, 6 magazines total, water purification tablets, emergency rations, medical kit, rope, climbing gear, cold weather clothing, everything a professional operator carried for solo operations in hostile territory. Everything except a way out. I began exploring deeper into the cave, moving carefully, checking for unstable rock, looking for passages that might lead to another exit. The red light from my emergency lamp painted everything in shades of blood. 30 minutes into the exploration, I found it. Dad's cache, hidden behind a rock formation in a side chamber, waterproof containers marked with his personal identification code, the same code he'd used on my birthday cards when I was a kid. Inside was a note, written in his precise handwriting on weatherproof paper. Katie, if you're reading this, you followed my trail. You're trapped. You're alone. You think you're going to die. Good. Now you understand what I felt every time I took young soldiers into combat, the weight of being responsible for lives, the fear of failing them, the knowledge that leadership means sometimes you don't come home. Now here's what you do next. Survive, because the flock still needs its shepherd. The cave system connects to an exit 2 miles east. Map attached. Route requires climbing through passages barely 2 feet wide in places. At your age, it won't be easy. But you're my daughter. You're tougher than you think. Trust your training, trust yourself. And when you get out, finish what we started. I love you more than I ever said. I'm proud of you more than you know. Dad. I read it 3 times, tears cutting tracks through the dust on my face. He'd known. 3 years ago, he'd known that someday I might be in this exact situation, trapped, alone, thinking I was going to die. And he'd left me the tools to survive. The cache contained everything I needed. Emergency radio with spare batteries, 72 hours of food and water, demolition charges for clearing obstacles, medical supplies, and a detailed map of the cave system showing a route to an exit 2 miles away through passages marked as difficult and extreme. At 25, I would have called it challenging. At 44, looking at passages described as barely 2 feet wide, I called it terrifying. But the alternative was dying here, and Dad hadn't raised a quitter. I began the journey, moving east through the cave system, using the map, checking distances. The first hour was manageable, wide passages, stable floor, almost pleasant compared to the combat outside. The second hour got harder. The passages narrowed, started requiring crawling. The ceiling dropped until I was moving flat on my stomach, pushing my pack ahead of me, rifle strapped across my back. The third hour I hit the first impossible section. A passage maybe 18 inches high, 30 feet long. Water pooled on the floor. I'd have to crawl through on my belly with my face inches from freezing water. At 44, with shoulders broader than they were at 20, it looked impossible. I thought about turning back, finding another route, but the map showed this was the only way. Dad had marked it. He'd believed I could do it. I sealed my gear in waterproof bags, took a deep breath, and started crawling. The rock pressed down from above. Water soaked through my clothing. Cold seeped into my bones. Halfway through, I got stuck. My shoulders wedged against rock, unable to move forward or back. Panic started to rise. Dad's voice in my head, calm, patient, the voice from 1,000 training sessions. Pain is just information, Katie. Process it. Don't let it control you. Relax. Find the angle. Keep moving. I forced myself to relax, to exhale completely, to angle my shoulders differently. Gained an inch. Then another, pushed forward, scraped skin off my back. Didn't care, just kept moving. I emerged from that passage soaked, bleeding, and hypothermic, but moving, still alive. The fourth hour brought vertical climbs, sections where I had to chimney up narrow shafts, bracing back and feet against opposite walls, inch by inch. At 25, my grip strength would have made this manageable. At 44, my hands cramped after the first 20 feet. My shoulders burned. My core muscles screamed. But I kept climbing, because giving up meant dying, and I had too much left to do. The fifth hour, I reached a section where the passage split. The map showed one route, but rock fall had blocked it. I had to choose between 2 unmapped passages. One sloped down, one continued level. Logic said level was safer. Instinct said down. I chose down, trusting the instinct Dad had spent 20 years training into me. The passage descended at a steep angle, became a slide. I couldn't stop, just tried to control the descent, slammed into walls, bounced off projections, came to rest in a chamber filled with ice-cold water up to my chest. Hypothermia was setting in hard now. I was shaking uncontrollably. My thinking was getting fuzzy, the kind of cold that kills even when you're trying to survive. I found a dry alcove, broke out my emergency gear, chemical heat packs, space blanket, dry clothing from the waterproof bag, changed out of wet gear with hands that barely functioned, got the heat going, wrapped up, forced myself to eat even though I felt sick. Survival is about the boring details, about doing the right things in the right order even when you're scared and cold and alone. Dad had drilled that into me. Practice the basics until they're automatic. So when you're at your worst, your training carries you. The 6th hour I pushed on. The cold had sapped my strength. I was moving slower, making mistakes, took a wrong turn and had to backtrack, wasted precious energy on dead ends. But the map kept showing progress. East, always east, toward an exit that had to exist because Dad said it did, because he'd survived this same journey 3 years ago, because if he could do it, so could I. The 7th hour, the passages got tighter again. This time I had to dislocate my shoulder to fit through a constriction, gritted my teeth, levered my arm in the way field medics taught, felt the joint pop out, pain white and blinding, used the mobility it gave me to slip through, popped it back in on the other side, screamed into the darkness. Nobody heard, nobody came, just me and the mountain and my father's ghost. "Keep moving, Katie, you're almost there." The 8th hour I started hallucinating, seeing lights that weren't there, hearing voices, Dad's voice, telling me to quit, that I'd done enough, that it was okay to rest, to sleep, to let go. I knew those were the lies hypothermia and exhaustion told, the brain's way of giving permission to die. I ignored them, kept crawling, kept climbing, kept moving toward an exit I hadn't seen yet but had to believe existed. The 9th hour I smelled fresh air, faint, but distinct, the smell of outside, of freedom. I followed it like a lifeline, through passages so tight I exhaled all the way and pulled with my fingertips, through sections where I had to dig with my hands to clear rock fall. The 10th hour I saw light, actual light, gray and dim but real, daylight filtering through a crack in the rock ahead. I'd found the exit. It took another hour to clear enough rock to squeeze through. My hands were bloody. My shoulders barely functioned. I'd left gear behind in the caves, kept only the rifle, the radio, and the evidence from Dad's cache. When I emerged, it was dusk, 18 hours since the missile strike. I was 8 miles from the nearest friendly position, deep in enemy-controlled territory, injured, exhausted, hypothermic. But alive. I found cover in a boulder field, set up Dad's emergency radio. It was older than the tactical gear we used now, but it was powerful, long range, designed for exactly this situation. I keyed the transmit button, sent out a distress call on the frequency Dad had marked on his map. "Any friendly station, this is Shepherd. Emergency extraction required. Grid follows." I transmitted my coordinates, waited, nothing, tried again, still nothing. Then a voice came back, but it wasn't Colonel Hayes, it wasn't SEAL Team 7. It was a voice I recognized from intelligence briefings. "General Robert Vance." "Sergeant Brennan, you're quite hard to kill, just like your father. Unfortunately for him, I eventually succeeded." My blood went cold, not from hypothermia, from understanding. Vance had been monitoring the emergency frequency, waiting, knowing that if I survived, I'd have to call for extraction, and he'd positioned forces to respond first. I could hear helicopters now, coming in fast from the west, but these weren't friendly rescue birds. These were Vance's assets, coming to finish what the missile had started. I tried to move, to run, but my body was done. 18 hours in the caves, the sprint before that, the altitude, the cold, the injuries. At 44, I'd pushed past every limit I had. There was nothing left. The helicopters landed, troops fast roped down, professional, well-trained. They secured me without roughness, just efficiency. Zip-tied my hands, took my weapons, loaded me onto the bird. General Vance was waiting when we landed at a forward operating base I didn't recognize. Not American, not coalition, somewhere off the books. The kind of place where inconvenient people disappeared. He was 58, distinguished looking, the kind of officer who looked good in uniform and better on camera. 3 stars on his collar, rows of ribbons on his chest, the exterior image of everything a general should be. He looked at me with eyes that held no warmth, no mercy, just calculation. "Sergeant Brennan, you've caused me considerable trouble. Your father did the same. I thought having him killed during a training accident would end the investigation. Instead, it just delayed it 3 years. You murdered him." I made a tactical decision to eliminate a threat to operational security. Your father was going to destroy my career over misguided patriotism. He put honor before practicality, before survival, before understanding that in the real world, idealism gets you killed. He put honor before corruption, before treason, before becoming everything a soldier is supposed to stand against. Vance smiled, cold, practiced. "Is that what you think this is about? Good versus evil, patriots versus traitors. It's about survival, Sergeant. About understanding that the system is broken and the only way to win is to break the rules first. You sold American lives for money. 27 soldiers dead because you leaked their positions to the enemy. That's not breaking rules. That's murder." Vance's expression didn't change. No guilt, no remorse, no recognition that what he'd done was monstrous. "Those soldiers died in combat. It's unfortunate, but soldiers die. That's what they're for. What matters is that I survived, that I prospered, that I secured my future in a way that blind obedience never would have. And now you're going to kill me to protect that future. Of course, you and the SEAL team, all of you. The evidence you collected will disappear. Your deaths will be tragic accidents. The investigation will conclude that you died in combat against enemy forces. Nothing connects back to me. Colonel Hayes has the evidence, multiple copies, distributed to oversight authorities." Vance laughed, actually laughed. "Hayes, you think he's going to help you? Sergeant, Hayes has been part of this from the beginning. He and I served together in Desert Storm. We built this network together. When your father came to him with suspicions, Hayes reported directly to me. We've been monitoring your investigation from the start." The words hit like a physical blow. Hayes, Dad's old friend, the man I'd trusted, the man who'd authorized my mission. He'd been working for Vance all along. The betrayal was complete. Your father trusted Hayes, came to him because they were brothers in arms, and Hayes sold him out, just like he sold you out. The only reason you're still alive is because I wanted to watch you understand how completely you failed. Vance pulled out his phone, showed me a screen, live feed from somewhere. "Your SEAL friends. They're being transported to a remote location for debriefing. They think they're going to testify against me. Instead, they're going to die in a helicopter crash. Mechanical failure. Very tragic. But these things happen in combat zones." I struggled against the zip ties, trying to get free, trying to do something, anything. But I was injured, exhausted, restrained, helpless. "And there's nothing you can do about it, Sergeant. You failed. Your father failed. The corruption continues. I continue, and in a few hours everyone who could testify against me will be dead. That's when I heard it, the sound that changed everything. Helicopter rotors, multiple birds, coming in fast from the east. Vance heard it too. His expression shifted from confident to concerned. What is that? I gave orders that no other aircraft were to be in this sector. The radio crackled, a voice I recognized, Lieutenant Chen. General Vance, this is Griffin 6. You're surrounded. We have 4 helicopters, 40 operators, and we're broadcasting this entire conversation on an open channel. Every word you just said was recorded and transmitted to multiple authorities. Stand down or we will take you by force. Vance's face went white, then red, rage and fear competing. Impossible. You were supposed to be heading to the debriefing location. We never boarded those helicopters, sir. We've been tracking Sergeant Brennan since the missile strike, monitoring her emergency radio. We heard your conversation, all of it, including your confession to murdering her father and planning to kill us. Chief Webb's voice joined in, calm, professional, deadly serious. And sir, regarding Colonel Hayes, he's been feeding you false information for 2 weeks. He's not part of your network. He's been building a case against you. The evidence is already with the Inspector General, the FBI, and 3 journalists. You're done. I watched Vance process this, watched him understand that he'd lost, that his arrogance had led him to confess everything while being recorded, that he'd been outmaneuvered by the same people he'd tried to kill. Griffin forces landed around the compound. SEAL Team 7, other special operations units, military police. They came in hard and fast, professional, overwhelming. Vance's security team surrendered without a fight, smart enough to know when resistance was suicide. Lieutenant Chen walked up to me, cut my zip ties, helped me stand even though my legs barely functioned. Shepard, you good? I've had better days, but I'm alive, thanks to you. You taught us that the flock protects its shepherd too. We weren't going to let you die alone. Chief Webb appeared with a medical kit, started treating my injuries while I watched military police place Vance in custody, reading him his rights. The same rights he denied 27 soldiers when he sold their lives. Rodriguez came over, the young corporal whose brother had died in one of Vance's ambushes. His face was hard. Ma'am, I need to know, did he confess to my brother's death? He confessed to all of it, the leaked intelligence, the arranged ambushes, 27 murders, all of it recorded, all of it broadcast. He's going to spend the rest of his life in prison. Rodriguez nodded, fought back tears, found his voice again. Thank you, Shepard, for finishing what your father started, for getting justice for all of them. I looked at this young warrior, at the team surrounding me, at the family I'd found while hunting a traitor. I didn't do this alone. Your team refused to leave me behind, came back when anyone else would have written me off as dead. That's what made the difference. Chen spoke up, leading again, the way he'd learned. Shepard, we need to get you to medical. You're hypothermic, injured. You spent 18 hours in a cave system at altitude. You need treatment. I need to know about Colonel Hayes. Is he really clean or was that part of the deception? Hayes's voice came over the radio, calm but emotional. I'm clean, Sarah. I've been working with the IG since the day after you deployed, feeding Vance false information while building a parallel investigation. Your father suspected I might be compromised. He was wrong, but he was right to be paranoid. I'm sorry I couldn't tell you. Operational security required it. The helicopter ride to the medical facility was a blur. I was crashing now, adrenaline wearing off. The full weight of 18 hours underground, the injuries, the hypothermia, the exhaustion all hitting at once. I woke up 6 days later in Landstuhl Regional Medical Center, Germany. Lieutenant Chen was asleep in the chair beside my bed, still in his uniform, still on watch. When he noticed I was awake, he smiled. "Shepard, welcome back. You missed the fireworks." "What happened?" "Vance is in custody. So are 47 other officers in his network. Congressional hearings scheduled. Full investigation into every operation he touched for the past 15 years. You're being called the whistleblower who saved countless lives." I processed that, then asked the question that mattered. "The team, everyone make it all safe, thanks to you, and thanks to the fact that we learned from you. That protection goes both ways. That family means nobody gets left behind." I smiled. Mission complete, justice served, Dad's sacrifice given meaning. Then Chen's expression changed, became serious. "But there's something you need to know about your father's death. The investigation found something in Vance's communications. There was a third conspirator, someone higher in the chain who ordered the execution. Someone who's still active, still in power, and now knows you're the one who exposed everything." My blood went cold, despite the warm hospital room. "Who?" Chen handed me a classified file. The name on the cover made my heart stop. 4 stars, Joint Chiefs of Staff. A man who'd given the eulogy at Dad's funeral while knowing he'd ordered the murder. The war wasn't over. We'd won a battle, but the real enemy was still out there, still in power, still dangerous. I looked at Chen, at the young officer who'd grown from dismissive to devoted, who'd learned what leadership meant by watching sacrifice in action. "Then I guess we have more work to do." Chen nodded, serious but determined. "Yes, ma'am, but this time you're not doing it alone. Griffin team stands with you, all the way." I thought about Dad, about the mission he'd started, about the sacrifice he'd made, about the legacy he'd left me to carry. I wasn't just Shepard's daughter anymore. I was Shepard, the protector, the hunter, the one who finished missions no matter the cost. And the hunt was just beginning. Some legacies are written in blood and honor and the courage to stand alone when necessary. Some are written in the bonds forged through shared sacrifice. Mine was written in both. At 44 years old, I'd learned what my father tried to teach me all along. That being Shepard wasn't about impossible shots or mountain survival or even bringing down corrupt generals. It was about protecting those who couldn't protect themselves, about finishing missions others started, about standing in the gap between good men and death. Dad would be proud of the operator I'd become, of the leader I was learning to be, of the family I'd found in 12 young warriors who'd refused to let me die alone. The flock had protected its shepherd. Now together, we were going to finish what Dad started. No matter how high the corruption went, no matter what it cost, no matter how long it took. Because that's what shepherds do, they protect the flock, always. Even when the wolves wear stars, the seals came back for me. Lieutenant Chen, Chief Webb, all 12 of them, disobeyed the extraction order, circled back through enemy territory, tracked my emergency radio signal through 18 hours of silence, and surrounded General Vance's black site just as he was confessing to murdering my father. At 44 years old, broken and bleeding in a hospital bed 6,000 miles from the fight, I learned something I'd spent my whole career refusing to accept. Legacy isn't what you accomplish alone, it's what you inspire in others. The doctors said I'd be in Germany for 3 weeks. Physical therapy, observation, Medical evaluation to determine if a 44-year-old woman could continue operational duty after dislocating a shoulder, crawling through 2 miles of cave passages, and surviving severe hypothermia. The kind of evaluation that usually ended with medical retirement and a handshake. I gave them 4 days. Then I checked myself out against medical advice and caught a military transport back to Afghanistan. Colonel Hayes was waiting when I landed at Bagram, his expression somewhere between relief and exasperation. "Sarah, you're supposed to be in a hospital bed. The doctors said you need at least 2 more weeks of treatment." "The doctors don't know what I need, Colonel. What I need is to finish this, all of it." Hayes handed me a classified folder, the one Lieutenant Chen had shown me in the hospital, the one with a 4-star general's name on the cover. General Marcus Thornton, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, 59 years old, decorated combat veteran, 2 silver stars, a bronze star with V device, Purple Heart, by all public accounts, a genuine American hero. And the man who ordered your father's murder. I opened the folder, read the evidence. Communications intercepts between Vance and an unidentified senior officer, financial records showing offshore accounts, mission reports with Thornton's signature authorizing operations that put soldiers in compromised positions. It was circumstantial, suggestive, but not conclusive. "We can't prove he gave the order to kill Dad. Not yet. Vance is claiming he acted alone, that Thornton had no knowledge of the corruption network. Because Vance knows that if he implicates Thornton, he loses his only chance at a reduced sentence. Thornton's lawyers are already offering deals, testimony against the lower-level officers in exchange for immunity." Hayes nodded, grim. "And it's working. The investigation is focusing on Vance and the 47 officers in his network. Thornton is positioned as the honest leader who was deceived by corrupt subordinates. He'll come out of this looking like a reformer instead of the architect. Not if we expose him first. Sarah, he's the chairman of the Joint Chiefs. He has access to resources we can't imagine, security details, intelligence assets, legal protection that extends to the Supreme Court. Going after him isn't like going after Vance. This is different, more dangerous." "I know, but Dad spent 3 years building a case and Thornton had him murdered. I've spent 3 weeks finishing what he started, and Thornton tried to kill me and 12 SEALs with a missile strike. We're already in this fight. The only question is whether we finish it or let him win." Hayes studied me, seeing something in my eyes that made his decision. "What do you need?" "Access to Dad's complete investigation. Everything he compiled over 3 years. Not just the files I found, but the classified materials he submitted to oversight authorities. Someone buried them. I need to know who and why." Hayes made a call, spoke quietly. When he hung up, he looked older. "Your father's investigation was received by the Inspector General's office 3 years ago, 2 days before he died. It was assigned to a senior investigator for review. That investigator determined the evidence was insufficient and closed the case. The investigator's name was Colonel James Reeves. He retired 6 months later. Current location unknown." "Let me guess. Reeves served with Thornton." Hayes pulled up a service record. There it was. Reeves and Thornton. Same unit in Desert Storm. Same medals. Same timeline. Brothers in arms who'd built their careers together. Dad's investigation never had a chance. It was buried by someone protecting Thornton. Which means we need new evidence. Something Thornton can't explain away. Something that connects him directly to the murders, the corruption, the cover-up. "I have an idea, but you're not going to like it." I rarely like your ideas, Sarah, but they usually work. What are you thinking? Thornton knows I'm alive, knows I exposed Vance, knows I have some of Dad's evidence. He's going to want that evidence destroyed and me eliminated before I can connect him to the network. So we use you as bait. We make him come after me personally, force him to act, and when he does, we document everything. Get him on record attempting to obstruct justice or eliminate a witness. Catch him in the act. Hayes was silent for a long moment. You're talking about painting a target on yourself, making yourself vulnerable to a man who's already tried to kill you once, a man with unlimited resources and no moral boundaries. Yes, sir, that's exactly what I'm talking about. The next morning, I met with SEAL Team 7, all 12 of them assembled in a secure briefing room. They looked different than they had 3 weeks ago. Harder, more focused. The kind of change that comes from watching someone sacrifice themselves for your survival. Lieutenant Chen spoke first. Shepard, we heard you checked out of medical early, against doctor's orders. That true? That's true, because we have unfinished business. I briefed them on Thornton, on the evidence, on the plan to use myself as bait to draw him out. When I finished, the room was silent. Then Chief Webb spoke, the voice of experience and loyalty combined. Ma'am, you're asking us to help you set up an operation that could get you killed. That targets the highest-ranking officer in the United States military. That risks all of our careers and possibly our freedom if it goes wrong. Yes, Chief, that's exactly what I'm asking. Webb smiled, the kind of smile warriors share before dangerous missions. Then count us in, all of us, because you taught us something these past 3 weeks. You taught us that honor matters more than rank, that protecting your people matters more than protecting your career, and that family stands together no matter what. Rodriguez added his voice, still carrying the weight of his brother's death. My brother died because corrupt officers sold his convoy route. Your father died investigating those same officers. You almost died exposing them. Now you're asking us to help finish the job. Ma'am, it would be an honor. Chen stood, addressed his team with the authority of a leader who'd earned respect through action. Griffin team, we're going operational. Our mission is to protect Sergeant Brennan while she draws out General Thornton. We document everything. We gather evidence that can't be ignored. And we make sure that when this is over, the man who ordered Shepard's father killed faces justice. Questions? No questions. Just nods. Just warriors ready to do what was right regardless of the cost. Over the next week, we built the trap. I leaked information through channels we knew Thornton monitored, claimed I had found my father's complete investigation, that I had evidence connecting him directly to the murders, that I was preparing to go public with everything. The bait was set. Now we waited to see if he'd take it. He took it. 3 days later, I received orders to report to a forward operating base near the Pakistan border for debriefing. The orders came through official channels, signed by senior officers, looked completely legitimate. Except Colonel Hayes hadn't issued them, and the fob they specified was one we knew had minimal security and limited oversight, the perfect place for an unfortunate accident. Hayes called me to his office, showed me the orders. This is it. Thornton's making his move. If you go to that fob, you won't come back. Then we make sure I go with protection, and we make sure everything that happens is documented. Sarah, even with Griffin team backing you, this is incredibly dangerous. Thornton won't send amateurs. He'll send professionals, people who know how to make deaths look accidental. Good, because I'm counting on them being professional enough to follow orders precisely, professional enough to coordinate with their command. professional enough to create communications we can intercept and document. Hayes understood, nodded slowly. You're going to let them think they're succeeding. Let them move against you while we record everything. Every order, every communication, every action that proves Thornton is directing an assassination attempt against a soldier who was investigating him. Exactly. And when we have enough evidence, Griffin team stops them and we arrest everyone involved, including whoever Thornton sends to do his killing. The next morning, I boarded a helicopter for the FOB. Griffin team was on board officially as my security detail, unofficially as the strike force that would intervene when Thornton's people made their move. The flight took 90 minutes. I spent it checking equipment and reviewing the plan. At 44, going into a situation where I was the bait felt different than it would have at 25. At 25, I would have felt invincible. At 44, I knew exactly how vulnerable I was, knew how many ways this could go wrong, knew that experience and planning could still be beaten by bad luck and superior numbers. But I also knew something 25-year-old me didn't, that some things were worth the risk. That justice for my father mattered more than my safety. That legacy was built on doing hard things when easier options existed. We landed at the FOB at 1400 hours. The base was small, maybe 200 personnel, mostly support staff, minimal combat forces, the kind of place that relied on its remote location and low profile for security. The kind of place where a helicopter crash or accidental weapons discharge could be explained away. I was met by a captain I didn't recognize, young, nervous, reading from a script. Sergeant Brennan, welcome to FOB Patriot. I'm Captain Miller. I'll be conducting your debriefing, if you'll follow me to the operations center. I followed. Griffin team followed me, close enough to react, far enough to appear routine. The operations center was a prefabricated building at the edge of the base, isolated, away from the main facilities. Captain Miller led me inside while Griffin team took up positions outside. Inside were 3 men in civilian clothes, not American, Eastern European maybe, the kind of contractors who did work governments couldn't officially sanction. Captain Miller's nervousness increased. He was realizing this wasn't a routine debriefing, that something was very wrong, but he was following orders, doing what he'd been told without questioning why. Sergeant Brennan, these contractors are here to escort you to a secure location for your safety. General Thornton is concerned about potential retaliation from Vance's network. You'll be in protective custody until the investigation is complete. I looked at the 3 contractors, saw the weapons under their jackets, saw the cold professionalism in their eyes. These weren't bodyguards, they were executioners. Captain, I don't know what you've been told, but these men aren't here for my protection. They're here to kill me, on General Thornton's orders, and if you let them take me, you become an accomplice to murder. Miller's face went pale, looking between me and the contractors, understanding dawning. That's ridiculous. General Thornton wouldn't. I have orders signed by. One of the contractors moved, reaching for his weapon. That's when Griffin team came through the door. Chen and Webb first. Weapons up, professional, overwhelming. The contractors froze, recognized they were outmatched. Hands where we can see them, now. The contractors complied, slowly, calculating odds, deciding that resistance was suicide. We zip-tied them, searched them, found weapons, communications equipment, and orders. Written orders detailing how my death should appear. Helicopter crash during transport, mechanical failure, no witnesses. The orders were signed with Thornton's electronic signature. Captain Miller was shaking now, understanding he'd been used. that he'd almost participated in murdering a soldier. I didn't know, I swear I didn't know. The orders came through official channels. I thought this was legitimate. I believe you, Captain, but you need to understand what's happening here. General Thornton is trying to cover up a corruption network by eliminating witnesses. My father was murdered for investigating him. I'm targeted for the same reason, and you were chosen to facilitate it because you're young and you follow orders without questioning. Chen was on the radio, calling for military police, for CID investigators, for everyone who could document this. We sat the contractors down, began questioning them, who hired them, who gave the orders, how they were supposed to make my death look accidental. They were professionals, didn't talk, knew their rights, knew that staying silent was their best option. Until Chief Webb mentioned the penalty for murdering American soldiers. Until he showed them the evidence we'd already compiled on Thornton's network. Until he explained that they could either cooperate and testify or face life in prison for conspiracy to commit murder. The oldest contractor broke first, 40-something, Russian accent, career mercenary who understood when the game was lost. We were hired through intermediaries, told to eliminate a target at this location, make it look accidental, payment deposited in offshore accounts. No direct contact with the person who ordered it, just instructions through encrypted channels. Webb showed him the communications we'd intercepted, the ones linking the encrypted channels to Thornton's office, the ones proving he'd authorized the hit. You've been working for General Marcus Thornton, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and we can prove it, so you can either testify against him or go down with him. Your choice. The contractor looked at his partners, at the evidence, at the soldiers surrounding him. He made the calculation. I want immunity and witness protection, then I'll tell you everything. Over the next 6 hours, we extracted a full confession. The contractor detailed 18 months of work for Thornton, eliminating witnesses, destroying evidence, making problems disappear. He provided dates, locations, methods, named 6 other people who'd been killed on Thornton's orders, including my father. The contractor had been part of the team that staged Dad's training accident in Colorado, had helped make it look like a fall during mountain navigation, had been paid $50,000 for the job. I listened to him describe how they'd done it, how they'd isolated Dad, how they'd made sure the body was damaged enough to prevent detailed autopsy, how they'd cleaned up evidence and disappeared. I listened with a face carved from stone, showing nothing, feeling everything. When he finished, I had one question. Did my father know it was coming? Did he have time to be afraid? The contractor met my eyes, something almost like respect there. No, he was ambushed, went down fighting, took out one of our team before we got him. Your father was a warrior, he died like one. It was the only consolation I'd get, not much, but something. Colonel Hayes arrived with a full investigation team. CID agents, JAG lawyers, FBI. This was too big to bury, too many witnesses, too much documentation. We transported the contractors to Bagram for formal processing. Captain Miller gave a full statement, explaining how he'd been used, how the orders had come through official channels with Thornton's signature. The evidence was ironclad: communications, financial records, witness testimony, physical evidence linking Thornton to multiple murders and the cover-up of a massive corruption network. But Hayes pulled me aside before we could celebrate. Sarah, this is enough for an investigation, maybe enough for an indictment, but Thornton still has powerful allies, still has access to the best lawyers money can buy. He'll fight this with everything he has. Then we make sure the evidence is public. We go to the media. We make this too big to bury. Already done. 3 journalists received encrypted files 20 minutes ago. By morning, this will be on every news channel in America. Thornton can't stop it now. Rodriguez approached, the young corporal who'd lost his brother, who'd trusted me to get justice. "Ma'am, I just heard. One of the kills the contractor confessed to. October 14th, 2017. Route Clearwater convoy ambush. He was the spotter for the mortar team that hit my brother's vehicle. He's going to testify that Thornton provided the convoy route to enemy forces." I looked at this young warrior, at the pain and rage and satisfaction mixing in his expression. "Your brother's death will mean something now, Rodriguez. Everyone who died because of Thornton's network, they'll all get justice. That's what we fought for. That's what we finished. Thank you, Shepard, for everything." The next 72 hours were chaos. Congressional hearings announced. FBI raids on Thornton's properties. Military police taking him into custody. News coverage saturating every channel. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff arrested for murder, conspiracy, treason. The corruption network exposed in detail. Names, dates, evidence. Everything Dad had died trying to reveal. Everything I'd spent 3 weeks finishing. I watched Thornton's perp walk on television from Colonel Hayes's office. Saw him in handcuffs. Saw him stripped of rank and dignity. Saw him facing the justice he'd avoided for 20 years. Hayes stood beside me, watching with satisfaction. "Your father would be proud, Sarah. You finished what he started, exposed corruption at the highest levels, saved lives, got justice for 27 murdered soldiers." I thought about Dad, about the 3 years I'd wasted being angry, about the reconciliation that came too late, about the legacy he'd left me. I just wish he was here to see it. He is in every shot you made, every decision you took, every time you put mission before self. You're his legacy, Sarah, living proof that what he taught, what he believed in matters. Lieutenant Chen entered the office, formal, respectful. "Shepard, Griffin team is assembled. We'd like a word if you have time." I followed him to the briefing room, all 12 SEALs standing at attention. Chief Webb called them to order. At ease. They relaxed but remained serious. Chen spoke for all of them. "Sergeant Brennan, 3 weeks ago you were a stranger who appeared out of fog to save our lives. You made impossible shots, provided overwatch nobody knew existed, taught us what honor means in action rather than words." He paused, finding the right words. "Then you sacrificed yourself so we could complete the mission. Stayed behind to draw fire while we extracted. We thought you died in that missile strike. When we learned you survived, we made a promise that we'd protect you the way you'd protected us. That family works both ways." Webb continued. "Over the past 3 weeks, you've shown us what the old breed really means. Not obsolete, not past your prime, but refined, perfected, carrying knowledge and skills that only come from decades of service. You've proven that experience matters. That age is an advantage, not a limitation." Rodriguez added his voice. "Ma'am, you got justice for my brother, for 27 soldiers, for your father. You exposed corruption that went all the way to the Joint Chiefs. You did what everyone said was impossible, and you did it at 44 years old while half the military was telling you to retire." Chen pulled out a document, official military paperwork. "Shepard, you're being promoted to Sergeant First Class effective immediately. You're being awarded the Silver Star for valor, but more than that, you're being offered a position, training the next generation of special operations snipers, teaching them what you know, passing on the legacy." He handed me the orders. I read them. saw my father's name in the endorsement section, a posthumous recommendation he'd submitted 3 years ago, before he died, recommending me for advanced training and eventual instructor duty. He'd known, even when I was angry at him, even when we weren't speaking. He'd known I had value, had potential, had something worth sharing with the next generation. There's one more thing. Webb held up a patch, a custom unit patch. It showed a shepherd's crook over crossed rifles, the word shepherd embroidered across the top. Griffin Team has adopted this as our unofficial patch, in honor of the operator who taught us what it means to protect the flock. We'd be honored if you'd accept it, and if you'd consider us family. I took the patch, felt the weight of it, the meaning. These young warriors had given me what I'd been missing for 3 years: purpose, family, belonging. I'd be honored to be part of Griffin family. All of you. Thank you for teaching me that protecting the flock goes both ways. The next morning, I received word that General Thornton had made a full confession. Facing overwhelming evidence and testimony from multiple witnesses, his lawyers had negotiated a plea deal: life in prison instead of execution, in exchange for complete disclosure of the corruption network. The final count was staggering: 19 years of corruption, 143 soldiers killed because their operations were compromised, millions of dollars in bribes and payments, a network that extended through multiple commands and touched hundreds of officers. Dad's investigation had only scratched the surface, but it had been enough to start the chain that brought it all down, enough to matter. Colonel Hayes called me to his office one final time. "Sarah, I have your orders. You're being reassigned stateside, Fort Bragg, Special Operations Training Center. You'll be developing and teaching the advanced sniper curriculum, training the next generation." I looked at the orders, at the career that was supposed to be over, at the future I'd thought I'd lost. There's something else, something unofficial. Hayes pulled out a folder, handwritten letter inside, from the Secretary of Defense. The Secretary wants to build a new unit, Special Operations Counterintelligence, focused on preventing corruption like Thornton's from taking root, investigating suspicious operational compromises, protecting soldiers from leaders who would sell them out. He wants you to help build it, to serve as a senior advisor. Because I exposed Thornton. Because you showed that one person with integrity can make a difference. That rank doesn't determine right and wrong. That honor matters more than politics. The Secretary believes we need more people like you in positions where they can affect change. I thought about it, about Dad, about the 27 names on his list, about the 143 names on Thornton's, about all the soldiers who died because leadership failed them. I accept on one condition. Name it. Griffin Team comes with me, all of them. They're part of this, part of what we built. If I'm going to train the next generation, I want them there, teaching what we learned together. Hayes smiled, already ahead of me. Already approved. Lieutenant Chen is being promoted to captain, Chief Webb to Master Chief. They're being assigned as instructors alongside you, the whole team, building something new, something better. 3 months later, I stood in front of my first class of advanced sniper students, 20 operators from different services, all young, all talented, all thinking they knew what they needed to know. I introduced myself simply. I'm Sergeant First Class Sarah Brennan. Some of you might know me as Shepherd. Over the next 12 weeks, I'm going to teach you advanced long-range shooting. But more than that, I'm going to teach you what it means to be a protector, what it means to put mission before self, what it means to honor the trust soldiers place in you when you take Overwatch. I saw skepticism on some faces, Questions about age, about whether a 44-year-old woman could teach them anything they didn't already know. I smiled. I'd seen that look before, from Lieutenant Chen and Griffin team, before they learned what the old breed could do. Some of you are wondering if I'm qualified to teach this course. Fair question. So let me establish credentials. Longest confirmed kill, 2,612 meters. Total confirmed kills in combat, 43. Number of friendly casualties under my overwatch, 0. Questions. The skepticism disappeared, replaced by attention, interest, the beginning of respect. Over the next weeks, I taught them everything Dad had taught me. The mathematics of external ballistics, environmental factors, mental discipline, physical conditioning. But more than that, I taught them about responsibility, about what it means when lives depend on your shooting, about the weight of the rifle and the burden of protecting those who trust you. And I taught them that age and experience aren't limitations, they're advantages, that the old breed isn't obsolete, we're refined, perfected, carrying wisdom that only comes from doing hard things over and over until they become second nature. Captain Chen taught close combat tactics. Master Chief Webb taught survival and evasion. Rodriguez taught communications and coordination. Griffin team sharing everything they'd learned from 3 weeks of operations with a woman who'd appeared from fog and taught them what honor meant in practice. On the final day of the course, I gathered the students for graduation. 20 operators who'd learned what I had to teach, who'd earned respect through performance, who understood now that protection was a responsibility, not just a skill. My father spent 23 years protecting soldiers. He died investigating corruption that got good men killed. 3 years later, I finished what he started, exposed that corruption, got justice for the murdered, and learned that legacy isn't about what you accomplish alone. It's about what you pass on to those who come after. I paused, saw understanding on their faces. You're the next generation. The ones who will carry these lessons forward, who will protect the soldiers who trust you with their lives, who will stand against corruption and failure and cowardice wherever you find it. You're the future of the old breed, the ones who understand that honor, integrity, and skill matter more than politics or rank or career. I held up the shepherd patch, the one Griffin team had given me. This patch represents a promise. The promise to protect the flock, always, no matter the cost, no matter the risk, no matter how old you get or how many people tell you you're past your prime. The flock always needs its shepherds, and shepherds always protect their flock. 20 students stood at attention, understanding the weight of what I was giving them, the responsibility, the honor. Dismissed. That night I visited Dad's grave at Arlington, first time since the funeral 3 years ago, brought the shepherd patch, the silver star, the promotion orders, the evidence that I'd finished what he started. I knelt at the headstone, traced his name with my finger. Hey Dad, sorry it took 3 years. Sorry I was too angry to listen when you tried to tell me what mattered, but I get it now. Everything you taught me. Everything you tried to show me. It all made sense when 12 young warriors needed someone who could make impossible shots, when justice required someone willing to sacrifice everything, when the mission demanded someone refined by experience, not limited by age. I set the patch on the grave, let it rest against the stone. You were right about pushing me, about demanding perfection, about preparing me for the day when lives would depend on whether I could do what others thought impossible. I finished your mission, Dad, got justice for you and for all the others, and now I'm passing on what you taught me, making sure the next generation understands what being shepherd really means. The wind picked up, rustling leaves, carrying the scent of autumn and change and new beginnings. I stood, came to attention, rendered a final salute to the man who'd made me what I was, the father I'd finally understood, the shepherd whose legacy I carried forward. Rest easy, Dad. The flock is protected, and it always will be. Because that's what shepherds do. We protect those who can't protect themselves. We stand watch while others sleep. We make the hard shots and the hard choices, and we carry the weight so others don't have to. At 44 years old, I'd learned what my father spent a lifetime trying to teach me. Legacy is built on honor, sacrifice, and the courage to stand alone when necessary. But the best legacies are carried forward by family. And I'd found mine. 6 months after General Thornton's arrest, I stood in front of my 4th advanced sniper class at Fort Bragg. 22 students this time. Best operators from Army, Marines, Air Force Special Tactics. All young, most under 30, all thinking they already knew what they needed to know about long-range shooting. I recognized that confidence, had carried it myself once, before mountains and caves and midnight sprints with missiles inbound taught me the difference between knowing and understanding. My name is Sergeant First Class Sarah Brennan, call sign Shepherd. Over the next 12 weeks, I'm going to teach you to make shots you think are impossible. But more than that, I'm going to teach you why those shots matter. Why the math and the wind calls and the ballistic calculations are just tools. The real skill is knowing when to pull the trigger and when to hold fire, when to sacrifice yourself and when to complete the mission, when to stand alone and when to trust your team. A hand went up, young Marine sergeant, maybe 26, fit, confident, the kind of operator who'd never failed at anything important. Ma'am, no disrespect, but most of us have already completed advanced sniper training. We're here for the extreme long-range certification. Do we really need the philosophy lesson? I smiled, heard Captain Chen cough in the back of the room, covering a laugh. He'd asked similar questions 6 months ago, before he learned what the old breed could teach. Good question, Sergeant. What's your name? Sergeant Kyle Morrison, ma'am, Marine Scout Sniper, graduated top of my class. Longest confirmed kill is 1,100 meters. Impressive, that's solid shooting. Tell me, Sergeant Morrison, why are you here? For the advanced certification, to learn extreme long-range techniques. Wrong answer. You're here because someone decided you had potential to be more than just a shooter. You're here to become a protector. Someone young warriors trust to keep them alive when they can't see the threats. That requires more than marksmanship. It requires judgment, discipline, understanding that every round you fire represents a life saved or a life taken. Philosophy, as you call it, is what separates snipers from murderers. Still think you don't need the lesson. Morrison's expression shifted, from dismissive to thoughtful. Good, he was teachable. Over the next weeks, I taught them everything Dad had taught me. The mathematics of bullet flight at extreme distance, how temperature affected powder burn rates, how altitude changed air density, how to read wind in grass, in dust, in the movement of mirage, technical skills that could be measured and tested. But I also taught them what couldn't be measured, how to handle the weight of responsibility when 12 lives depended on your shooting, how to make decisions under pressure when there was no time for perfect information, how to push past physical limits when your body was screaming to quit, but the mission required more. Captain Chen taught them small unit tactics, how snipers integrated with assault elements, how to coordinate fire with maneuver, how to protect without getting in the way. Master Chief Webb taught them survival and evasion, how to operate alone in hostile territory, how to move through terrain that wanted to kill you, how to survive when everything went wrong. Rodriguez taught them communications and intelligence gathering, how to observe without being seen, how to report without compromising position, how to be the eyes that saw what others missed. We were teaching them to be shepherds, protectors who understood that their job was keeping the flock alive. 3 weeks into the course, Morrison approached me after a training evolution. We'd spent the day on the range, shooting from 800 to 1800 meters. He'd performed well, technically proficient, but something was missing. "Ma'am, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "How do you know when to take the shot? I mean, I can hit targets at these ranges. The math works. The fundamentals are solid, but you shoot different, like you're not just calculating trajectory. You're deciding something bigger. How do you know?" I thought about the question. About 2,612 meters and a racing enemy counter-sniper. About protecting 12 young SEALs who'd later save my life. About the weight of the rifle and the burden of the call sign. "Experience, Sergeant. Every shot I've taken taught me something. Every mission refined my judgment. You can't learn that in a classroom or on a range. You learn it by doing, by making hard decisions under pressure, by living with the consequences when you choose right and when you choose wrong." "But how do I get that experience without getting my team killed while I'm learning?" "You train with people who already have it. You listen when they tell you stories that seem like philosophy lessons. You trust that the hard training and impossible standards exist for a reason. And when the moment comes, when lives depend on your decision, you execute what you've trained and you trust your preparation." Morrison nodded, understanding starting to dawn. "Your father, he trained you from childhood. That's why you're so good. You had decades of preparation before your first combat shot." "Yes, and I hated him for it. Thought he was too hard, too demanding. Thought he was trying to make me into something I didn't want to be. It took me until I was 44 years old and 12 lives depended on me to understand. He wasn't being hard. He was being thorough, because he knew someday I'd need every bit of that training to keep good people alive." "Is that why you push us so hard? The night movements, the altitude training, the impossible shot requirements." "I push you hard because somewhere there's a young soldier who's going to need you to make an impossible shot to save his life. And when that moment comes, I want you prepared. I want you to have done it so many times in training that in combat it's just muscle memory and mathematics. Because that soldier doesn't care if the shot is hard. He just cares if you make it." Morrison's expression changed, from student to warrior understanding the stakes. "Thank you, ma'am, I get it now." "Good, now get to the barracks. Tomorrow we're doing a 72-hour field exercise, solo operations. You'll learn what it means to be alone with your choices." 4 weeks into the course, we got the call. Emergency situation developing in Syria. American advisors pinned down by enemy forces. Sniper fire from extreme range. Multiple casualties. Air support unavailable due to weather. Ground reinforcements 6 hours out. The advisors needed counter-sniper support immediately. Someone who could engage threats at ranges beyond normal capability. Someone who could operate alone in hostile territory and make shots that mattered. Colonel Hayes called me personally. "Sarah, I know you're in the middle of a training cycle, but we have Americans dying and no assets in position to help. You're the closest qualified extreme long-range operator. Can you do it?" I looked at my students, at Morrison and the others who'd been learning what it meant to be shepherd, at the teaching I'd been doing for 6 months, at the career that had shifted from operational to instructional. Then I looked at Captain Chen, at the officer who'd learned that protection worked both ways, who understood that some missions required experience that couldn't be delegated. "Sir, I'll deploy immediately, but I want to bring a student, someone who needs to see how the training applies in actual combat, someone who needs to understand why we do what we do." Hayes was quiet for a moment, then agreed. "Approved, choose your student. Wheels up in 90 minutes. I chose Morrison, the young Marine who'd questioned the philosophy lessons, who was technically proficient but hadn't yet understood the weight of responsibility, who needed to see what shepherd meant in practice. We deployed to a forward operating base in eastern Syria, 40-minute flight. Morrison spent it checking equipment, nervous energy, the kind young operators show before their first real test. I spent it remembering Dad's training, the mountains in Afghanistan, 18 hours in the caves, the weight of protecting 12 lives, the lessons that could only be learned by doing. The briefing was straightforward. 8 American advisors embedded with local forces, pinned in a compound by enemy sniper fire from approximately 2,300 meters. 3 advisors wounded, 1 critical, medical evacuation impossible under current fire, weather closing in, visibility decreasing. We had maybe 4 hours of usable light. After that, the advisors would be stuck overnight with a critically wounded man and no way to extract. The mission was simple. Insert to elevated position overlooking the compound. Locate and eliminate the enemy sniper. Enable medical evacuation. Extract before dark. Simple in concept, brutal in execution. We inserted by helicopter to a landing zone 3 miles from the compound. From there, we moved on foot to the high ground. Morrison carried his rifle and standard loadout. I carried Dad's rifle, the one that had made 2,612-meter shots, the one that carried a legacy. The movement took 90 minutes, uphill through rocky terrain. Morrison was fit, young, moved well, but I watched him struggle with the altitude, with the weight of the pack, with the mental pressure of knowing this was real. I'd moved through worse terrain at 44 with missiles inbound and enemies closing. This was manageable, but for Morrison, first time under real pressure, it was his mountain to climb. We reached the observation position with 3 hours of light remaining, set up in a rock formation that gave us clear sight lines to the compound and the surrounding ridges. I glassed the area while Morrison established our position. The compound was visible at 1,400 meters. I could see the American advisors, saw the hasty fighting positions, saw the wounded being treated under cover, saw the desperation. The enemy sniper was invisible, but I knew where to look. High ground to the north, good concealment, clear fields of fire. I ranged likely positions, 2,200 meters, 2,350, 2,400. Morrison was beside me, scanning through his rifle scope, searching. I don't see him, ma'am. The range is extreme and the positions are well concealed. He's there, northeast ridge, approximately 2,300 meters. Watch the shadows where the rock meets the vegetation. He'll move eventually. They always do. How do you know? Because I've been the hunter and I've been the hunted. I know how snipers think. I know where I'd position if I wanted to pin down that compound. And I know patience wins this game. We settled in, watching, waiting, the kind of work that separated professionals from amateurs, the ability to remain motionless, to observe without being observed, to wait for the moment that mattered. 20 minutes later I saw movement, brief, maybe 2 seconds, enemy sniper adjusting position, range 2,340 meters. Contact northeast ridge, 2,340 meters, I have him. Morrison shifted his rifle, tried to acquire the target, struggled with the distance and the limited exposure. I can't get a clear sight picture at this range. He's too well concealed. Then watch and learn. I ranged him precisely, 2,347 meters, checked environmental conditions, wind 12 miles per hour from the northwest, temperature 78 degrees, altitude 4,200 feet, Humidity 40%. Input the data, got my firing solution, made the adjustments, settled into shooting position. Morrison was watching me instead of the target, seeing how I moved, how I prepared, how I controlled my breathing and found the moment of stillness between heartbeats. Ma'am, at this range, with limited target exposure, the probability of first-round hit is low. Should I call for artillery or air support? Negative. Artillery would take 20 minutes to coordinate and might hit the compound. Air support is unavailable. We have one option: make the shot. Watch. I put my crosshairs on the last known position, held with massive compensation for bullet drop and wind drift, waited for him to move again, knowing he would, knowing patterns, knowing that snipers check their sight lines periodically. 40 seconds later he shifted, minimal movement, just enough to confirm his position, just enough exposure for a shot. I fired. 3.3 seconds of bullet flight, over 1.3 miles, the kind of shot most snipers would call luck if it connected. Through my scope, I watched the enemy sniper collapse. Target down, 2347 meters. Compound is clear for medical evacuation. Morrison stared, silent, processing what he'd just witnessed. You made that look routine, like it was just another training shot. It was just another training shot. I've made that distance thousands of times, on ranges, in training, in combat. The pressure doesn't change the fundamentals. You either know how to shoot or you don't. Experience just means you've proven it to yourself enough times to trust it. The medical evacuation helicopter came in 20 minutes later, loaded the wounded advisor and extracted safely. 8 Americans went home alive because of one shot at extreme distance. We extracted after dark, moved back to the LZ through unfamiliar terrain. Morrison struggled more on the movement back, tired, carrying the weight of witnessing real combat, processing what he'd learned. When we reached the FOB, he finally spoke. Ma'am, I need to apologize for questioning the training, for thinking I already knew what I needed to know, for dismissing the philosophy lessons as unnecessary. I was wrong. What did you learn today, Sergeant? That the technical skills are just the foundation. The real skill is judgment, knowing when to shoot, knowing how to prepare, knowing that someone's life depends on you making the shot even when conditions are terrible and the pressure is overwhelming. That only comes from experience, from doing it over and over until it's automatic. Good, now you understand why we train the way we do, why I push you past comfortable, why the standards are impossible, because someday you'll be alone on a mountain with Americans dying and nobody else to call. And in that moment, your training is all you'll have. Morrison nodded, changed, the confidence still there but tempered now with understanding. Ma'am, how old are you if you don't mind me asking? 45. Old enough to be your mother, old enough to be told I should retire, old enough to be considered obsolete by half the military. But you just made a shot I couldn't make, saved 8 lives I couldn't save, did it at an age when most people are planning retirement. That's not obsolete. No, Sergeant, that's experience. That's the old breed. We don't become obsolete, we become refined, perfected. We carry knowledge and skills that only come from decades of doing hard things. And when you're 65, if you keep training and keep learning and keep pushing yourself, you'll be making shots the next generation thinks are impossible. Because that's what we do. We prove that age is an advantage, not a limitation. We returned to Fort Bragg the next morning. I gathered the class for after-action review. Morrison briefed what he'd witnessed, the shot, the environmental conditions, the decision-making process, the weight of real consequences. The other students listened with new attention, understanding now that this wasn't just about marksmanship. It was about becoming someone warriors trusted with their lives. Over the remaining weeks of the course, I saw the transformation. Morrison and the others stopped questioning the hard training, started embracing the philosophy lessons, began to understand that being shepherd meant more than making long shots. It meant carrying responsibility with honor. Graduation day came 12 weeks after we started. 22 students who'd earned the right to call themselves extreme long-range operators, who understood that the certification was just permission to keep learning. That mastery was a lifetime pursuit. I stood before them, one final time as their instructor. You came here thinking you knew what you needed to know. Some of you questioned why we pushed so hard, why we demanded perfection, why we taught philosophy alongside marksmanship. Now you know. Because being shepherd isn't about the shots you make. It's about the lives you save, the warriors you protect, the trust you honor through perfect preparation and flawless execution. I paused, saw understanding on their faces. My father spent 23 years protecting soldiers. Master Sergeant Michael Brennan. He died investigating corruption that got good people killed. I spent 3 weeks finishing his mission, exposed that corruption, got justice for the murdered, and learned that legacy isn't what you accomplish alone. It's what you pass on to those who come after. You're that legacy now. The next generation of shepherds. The ones who will protect the flock when I'm gone. The ones who will prove that honor and skill and experience matter more than politics or rank or age. Morrison spoke for the class. Ma'am, we want you to know that we understand now what you've taught us, what your father taught you, what being shepherd means. We'll carry it forward. We'll train the generation after us. We'll make sure the legacy continues. Thank you for showing us what the old breed really means. I held up the shepherd patch, the one Griffin team had given me, the one that represented a promise to protect the flock always. This patch represents that promise, the promise to stand watch, to make the hard shots, to sacrifice when necessary, to honor the trust placed in you by those who can't protect themselves. You've earned the right to wear it, but more than that, you've earned the responsibility it represents. Wear it with honor. Teach others what it means. And when you're 45 or 55 or 65, when people tell you you're too old and should retire, remember this. The flock always needs its shepherds, and shepherds never stop protecting their flock. That night, I returned to Arlington, second visit to Dad's grave since his death, this time bringing not just evidence of mission complete, but proof that his legacy was growing. I knelt at the headstone, set the graduation roster beside it, 22 names, 22 shepherds who'd carry forward what he'd started. Hey Dad, finished another class today. 22 operators who understand now what you tried to teach me. That being shepherd is about more than shooting. It's about responsibility, about honor, about protecting those who trust you with their lives. They'll teach others, who will teach others, who will teach others. Your legacy growing with each generation. The wind carried the scent of cherry blossoms, spring in Washington, new growth, new beginnings. I thought you were too hard on me, thought you demanded too much, thought you were trying to make me into something I didn't want to be, but you were preparing me for the moment when being good enough wasn't enough, when lives depended on being perfect, when experience and preparation were the difference between success and failure. I understand now, and I'm teaching others to understand. Your mission continues, Dad, through me, through them. Through every operator who learns that age is refinement, not limitation. That honor matters more than career, that protecting the flock is the highest calling. I stood, rendered a salute, not to the grave but to the legacy, to the standard he'd set and the example he'd lived, to the father who'd taught me everything that mattered even when I was too stubborn to listen. Rest easy, shepherd, the watch continues, the flock is protected, and the old breed still matters. 3 months later, I received word that Sergeant Morrison had been deployed to Africa. Counter-terrorism operation. His team was ambushed, pinned down by sniper fire at extreme range. Morrison had climbed to high ground alone, made a 2,400-meter shot that eliminated the threat and saved 6 lives. His after-action report credited his training, specifically cited the philosophy lessons, the understanding that technical skill was just foundation, that judgment and responsibility mattered more than marksmanship. Captain Chen showed me the report, smiled. Looks like he learned the lesson, Shepard. He learned what we taught him, what my father taught me, what we'll keep teaching until every operator understands. Experience matters, age is advantage, and the old breed doesn't become obsolete. We become the foundation for what comes next. Rodriguez entered the office, the corporal who'd lost his brother, who'd stood with me against corruption, who'd learned that justice required courage and patience. "Ma'am, we just got authorization for the new unit. Counterintelligence Special Operations. Secretary of Defense approved funding and manning. They want you to command it, build it from the ground up. Make sure corruption like Thornton's never happens again." I thought about it, about Dad, about the mission that had consumed 3 years of his life and cost him everything, about the legacy we'd built together, about the responsibility of making sure good soldiers never again died because leaders betrayed them. I accept, on one condition. Griffin Team forms the core of the unit, and we recruit from the Shepard program graduates, people who understand honor, who have proven they'll stand against corruption regardless of rank or consequence, people who know that protecting the flock means protecting them from enemies outside and inside the system. Chen nodded, already expecting my answer. Already done. We've got 20 operators volunteering, all Shepard program graduates, all willing to risk their careers to do what's right. Your father would be proud. I looked at these men, at the family I'd found while hunting traitors, at the warriors who'd refused to let me die alone, at the legacy we were building together. Then let's get to work, because somewhere there's another young soldier whose commander is selling him out, another investigation being buried, another family that's going to lose someone to corruption, and we're going to stop it, not because it's easy, not because it's safe, but because that's what shepherds do. We protect the flock. Always. 5 years later, I stood in front of my 15th advanced sniper class. 50 years old now, gray in my hair, lines on my face, knees that ached in cold weather, shoulders that reminded me of cave passages and dislocated joints. But I could still outshoot any student who walked through that door. Could still make 2,400-meter shots in conditions that challenged half my age. Could still move through mountains and survive alone and do everything the mission required. Because age hadn't made me obsolete. It had made me refined, perfected, a weapon honed by decades of use, a teacher carrying wisdom that only came from doing hard things over and over until they became second nature. The students were younger than ever, digital natives who'd grown up with technology, who questioned why they needed to learn old-school techniques when drones and smart weapons existed. I gave them the same answer I always gave. Because someday the technology will fail, the drones will be jammed, the smart weapons will be unavailable, and you'll be alone on a mountain with Americans dying and nothing but your rifle and your training and your judgment. In that moment, you'll understand why we teach the old ways, why experience matters, why the old breed isn't obsolete. We're just carrying knowledge the new breed hasn't learned yet. After class, a young student approached, couldn't have been more than 23, fit, eager, respectful. "Ma'am, my father served with you in Afghanistan, Corporal Danny Rodriguez. He talks about Shepard like you were a legend. Says you finished what your father started. says you're proof that the old breed still matters. He told me I should volunteer for this program, to learn what being shepherd really means. I wanted you to know that hearing his stories inspired me to be here. I looked at this young warrior, second generation, Danny Rodriguez's son, carrying forward a legacy that his father had helped build, learning lessons his father learned from me, understanding that some things transcend generations. Your father stood with me when we brought down Thornton, fought beside me, stood with me when it would have been easier to walk away. He's a good man. Learn from him. Learn from this program. And when you're my age, when people tell you you're too old and should quit, remember this conversation. Remember that shepherds don't retire. We just keep protecting the flock until we physically can't anymore. And even then, we teach others to carry on. Tell your father I said hello. Tell him the mission continues. The young Rodriguez smiled, pride in his father, pride in being here. I will, ma'am. He'll be glad to hear it. Thank you for everything you've done, for him, for all of us. That night I sat in my office at Fort Bragg, looking at the wall covered with photos, Griffin team, graduation classes, students who deployed and made shots that saved lives, the shepherd patch displayed in a frame beside my father's Medal of Honor. Captain Chen entered, older now, more gray than brown in his hair, but still sharp, still professional, still the officer who'd learned that protection worked both ways. Shepard got a call from the Pentagon. They want us to brief Congress on the counterintelligence unit, show what we've accomplished, the investigations we've conducted, the corruption we've stopped, the lives we've saved by making sure leaders can't sell out their soldiers. How many cases have we closed? 47 investigations, 32 officers removed from command, hundreds of soldiers protected from betrayed operations, and not a single American death due to compromised intelligence in any unit we've overseen. Your father's mission, completed 1,000 times over. I thought about Dad, about the 3 years he'd spent gathering evidence alone, about the sacrifice he'd made, about the legacy that had grown from his death. He'd be proud of what we built, of what we're protecting, of the fact that his death meant something, that it led to systemic change, that soldiers are safer because he had the courage to stand against corruption. Chen nodded, then pulled out a folder. One more thing. The Marine Corps wants to name their new sniper school after you, the Brennan Advanced Marksmanship Center. They're saying you've done more to advance long-range shooting doctrine than anyone in the past 50 years. They want your blessing. I laughed. The idea of a building named after me seemed absurd. I was just a soldier who'd finished her father's mission, who'd learned from good teachers and taught others what I'd learned. Nothing special, nothing worth naming buildings after. Tell them I'm honored, but if they're going to name it after anyone, it should be my father, Master Sergeant Michael Brennan. He's the one who started all of this, who set the standard, who taught me everything that mattered. They want to name it after both of you, father and daughter, the Brennan Legacy Center, teaching that experience and honor matter more than age or politics, that the old breed is the foundation for the new breed, that protecting the flock is the highest calling. I looked at the photos on my wall, at the legacy we'd built, at the students we'd taught, at the lives we'd saved, at the future we were shaping. Then tell them yes, but only if they understand what it represents, not just marksmanship, not just long-range shooting, but the responsibility that comes with the rifle, the weight of protecting those who trust you, the honor of standing watch while others sleep, the courage to do what's right even when it costs everything. That's what being shepherd means, and that's the legacy worth passing on. At 50 years old, I'd spent half my life learning what my father tried to teach me from the beginning. That age is refinement, not limitation. That experience is the ultimate weapon. That honor matters more than comfort. That protecting others is the highest calling. That legacy is built not on what you accomplish, but on what you inspire in those who come after. The flock still needed its shepherds, would always need them. And as long as warriors existed who understood what that meant, who carried the responsibility with honor, who stood watch no matter their age or the cost, the mission would continue. Dad's mission, my mission, the mission of every shepherd who'd ever put the flock before themselves. Some legacies are written in blood and sacrifice, some in honor and courage, some in the lives saved by those who stood watch when others couldn't. Mine was written in all of these, and it would continue long after I was gone, through the students I'd taught, through the operators they'd train, through the generations who'd learned that protecting the flock was what mattered most. At 50 years old, with gray hair and aching joints, and a body that reminded me daily that I wasn't 25 anymore, I could still make the shots that mattered, could still teach the lessons that saved lives, could still carry the weight of the call sign with honor. Because I was Shepherd's daughter, and that meant something, would always mean something. The flock was protected, the watch continued, the legacy lived on. And that was enough. More than enough. It was everything. This story hit different for me. At 44, Sarah was told she was finished, just like so many of you were told at some point in your careers. But she proved what we all know deep down. Experience doesn't expire, it sharpens. I want to hear from you veterans out there. Have you ever been dismissed because of your age, only to prove them dead wrong? What's your impossible shot moment? Drop your stories below. And if this one resonated, hit subscribe. I've got more stories about warriors who refused to quit when the world told them they were done. Your story matters, share it.